Exhibit, you watching Move Faces TV.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Kids in the Room podcast. Kids in the Room podcast.
That's right. That's right.
Brought to you by Move Faces TV. Let's go.
Woo! All right. Welcome to the Kids in the Room podcast. It's good to have Daryl Davis back on the show. Daryl, how are you doing today?
Here. Doing good, man. How about you?
Living La Vida Loca. Same day, same year. Yeah,
same year. Trying to get one closer, one day closer.
$1, that type of thing.
Yeah, always, man. Always.
Yeah, I just actually finished up a pod yesterday. I had a nice gentleman that was actually on the podcast who was like, delivering care for peace around the world, and he said he was doing it for like 50 years, and I was trying to make sure that he came by the pod to actually do it, live, because I was like explaining to him that if you do it live, there is a better synergy about things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and also
absolutely.
have all the pro equipment, right? So if I got all the pro equipment, how can you beat that with your home and you live around not too far, 30 minutes away, roughly?
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's a no-brainer. Absolutely.
Right.
It's a quick hop, skip, and a jump.
Right, but he was like, "Oh no, I just always do it on Zoom, and it's just so much convenient, and it works just fine." I was like, "Yeah, but when it comes to packaging things, there's nothing like the real thing."
No, yeah, man. I mean, that's awesome. Actually, I do plan on, hopefully, if we get around 3, making that trip to the West Coast, seeing what y'all are about, But that's hats off to that man for what he's doing. That's
yeah.
amazing.
He came out and he definitely he wrote like a bunch of like ratings about the podcast and his experience, and he was super. He was super. After he came here, he was like, "What the heck?" He's like, "This is like." He was like, "This is amazing."
Yeah,
like this is real.
Yeah,
and
real.
The conversation was great. He just enjoyed it. He was like, "Wow." And, it was a great conversation.
Good synergy. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that one out, man.
Handshake.
Hats off to you, man. Seriously, keep it up, man. We need more of that. So that's awesome.
A lot of hard work, man. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do in podcasting. Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, in this climate, especially nowadays, there's a lot to talk about. Casts and pods.
Pods, and there's so many different podcasts that are out right now.
AirPods, Yeezy pods.
Oh yeah,
a lot of pods happening.
Yeah, but I mean, speaking of pods, there's so many different type of podcasts that are out right now, and it's just like I took about an 8-month period of time where I just like kind of paused. And it's like now that I've looked at even just that little gap of time, it seems like everyone's trying to open up their own podcast, and it's like, is it for the love of it, or is it just for like a monetarial thing right now?
That's a really interesting question. I would say I would like to think it's both, but there's a part of me that, given inflation and things that's going on across the nation, I think it's a little bit more of a monetary or just being it. I might not say, I think once you make the money is always, it might not be first tier anymore. I feel like now it's like, I want to be next. I want to be this. So you're competing against other influencers or other podcasters. You want to be the first one to do something, or you want to be. So I see the streams and the things always get more extreme for the stream. You catch my drift? Like I'll see, I dropped the ball off of a 2,000 foot, building, and it blew, so it's like, it's always something to grab your attention. So I think that the money is going to come if you're doing things that grab attention. So I think it's more so who grabbed the most attention. I think that's kind of probably what the main driving force is for most all these new podcasters. But there are a lot of people probably that need the money. So I can definitely see them starting for that reason. But once you get into that realm and you're a part of the society, I think that they might start saying, how can I outdo you? Or who can I meet with? Or who can I have come to my stream that you can't get, or who can I, that's kind of like what it's all about, I guess, because, streams equal money, money equals money. So.
Yeah, it does. I think like one thing that I've kind of seen, Daryl, is that when I start looking back at things, it feels to be that when you look back, you see that during the pandemic was a time where a lot of people started thinking about, okay, what can I do? And then that's where a lot of podcasts started being birthed, right? And that was when Rogan hit his what was his $1 million deal with Spotify. And then it seemed like after that point, everybody said, oh, well, let me just do a podcast.
Oh yeah.
And it just slowly started trickling. And if you didn't get it done, or if you didn't do it towards that first 2 or 3 years, it seems like now you have to face a bunch of competition because everybody just thinks they can open up
gatekeepers, competition. And I will say that's a really good point when you mentioned the Joe Rogan experience, no pun. But yeah, the 2020 pandemic, you know, it did kind of, for me, I guess I was blessed and cursed where I kind of had a position of still seeing certain humans every now and then. I wasn't completely isolated to a degree. I still went back to work. I had to do certain things for the department. But I will say a lot of people felt loneliness to a degree they didn't know existed, you know, because they never were in a lonely element. They thought they were an ex breakup or something like that. You know, that's momentary. You still go to work, still got family, maybe you're still seeing people. So you're not really sitting in your thoughts. And I think that really woke up and broke up a lot of people, if you want to be honest. So I will say the ones that took it and ran with it were the podcasters who said, hey, people are alone. They want to have interaction. They can't be around me, but you can hear me. So I'll talk to you casually and you'll feel like you're there and you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll think. And it brought people together. And it was like, hey, who has the best topic? Who has the best conversation? Who has the best idea? So they took that and people tuned in and they were like, what else I'm doing? I'm getting paid to work from home, or I'm just broke at home, or I just, you know, whatever. So I will say Joe Rogan, it's cool to see people who are already doing it and then them blowing up, because I'm sure he has some legwork behind that. I mean, the deal probably had to show something for it, you know, but I will say the podcasting really took off, and I don't think it slowed down since the pandemic. If anything, I think it showed people what it can really do and what it's all about. It kind of shined light on it. So yeah, some cool stuff, man, with that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do see, like, you know, a lot of people doing those things. I do understand that, you know, those are probably some of the reasonings.
Yeah.
People launching out a podcast per se. But I think it's just like, I don't know, maybe because I do it. Yeah. And I do it for the love of it.
Yeah.
I kind of look at it as like, I don't like it when people just jump into it and kind of do it as like a,
monetary.
Yeah, they just jump into for money, and it just seems like soulless. It's like, what's the message behind it? Like, what's the purpose? Like, is this your calling, or is it just like some shit that you just like, you basically want to say, you know what, I really want to get, you know, my voice heard, and, you know, you know, and I just want to be famous. And it's like all the wrong reasons based on what I'm trying to explain.
Oh yeah. I'll say, do you feel like Joe, do you think he's kind of, because Joe does a lot of things I'm pretty aware of. So do you think, was he always kind of for the love? He had to be at the beginning, I would say, because, you know, if you're starting off, you are Joe Rogan actually, so never mind. You are kind of known, you have a fan base already. Would you say like he is one of your favorite ones that you think is in it for like the love of it too? Because I definitely feel like you are. So I would want to know, like, from behind the scenes or from the non-podcasting guys, like, do you consider him in like the positive realm?
Yeah, I would like to say that, you know, when it comes to Rogan, Lex Friedman, and, you know, a couple other people, I would also even say probably, you know, and maybe I don't know this 100%. I'm not 100% sure, but, you know, I would think like the Joe Budden podcast.
Oh yeah.
I think he's kind of started it, you know, at a time where he was kind of probably into it for, you know, just for the love of it. And, you know, and then I would say probably also maybe a hybrid of, he can make profit out of it too. I mean, a lot of people, if you're in the Hollywood system, always have to think about how can you monetize something eventually. They usually don't go into something without thinking of that in hindsight.
Yeah, because you put so much time into it, you know, the equipment, as you know, it's not cheap. And, you know, so there's a lot of things you got to spend money to get people's attention, you know, to take your platform seriously. Because you want, I guess the ones that care, they want their message heard, or they want people that have a message to be able to say something on a platform that's respected and that people come to for content, for like purity, you know, pure. So I will say, you want to make some money back, but I think, like I said, you know, mentioned earlier, it's just getting the attention or the views. Like I do agree that there's probably a saturated market. I will say, it's a lot of ones out there who probably aren't taking it seriously. And, you know, and they're baiting or they're probing. You know, the ones that kind of they just go for shock value. It's not just a smooth combo. It's like off the gate. You know, they're like, "Hey, so I heard this happened to you. Like, is that true?" You know, it's like it's kind of different. I mean, would you say those are still considered podcasts, or are they more like sideshow interviews that have podcast elements?
I don't know. I would consider them podcasts in my
Okay.
view. I mean, there's guys like, Fresh and Fit.
Oh, Howard Stern actually, he kind of has that energy.
Yeah. But like, like Fresh and
Fresh
Fit,
and
I
Fit,
feel
yeah.
like that's a great podcast. I feel like Fresh and Fit is like it's more like a vibe
Yeah.
podcast. It's like, you feel like it's entertainment. You
Yeah.
feel like you're actually in the room hanging out
Yeah.
with these guys.
That's what
And
I
they're saying
want.
things.
Yeah, that's what I want, man. I want to feel like I'm in the room, like being
Yeah.
a kid again in the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but yeah, I do like I like that feeling with Fresh and Fit
Yeah.
podcast. Have you watched their podcast by any chance?
I haven't, man. That's why when you said that, I feel like I have, but I've seen so many faces. Is Fresh and Fit that's not the two got light skin guy and the dark skin guy, is it?
Yeah, things like one's like Sudanese
something
like that, and the other one's like Barbados or something like that, and they're two guys and they're
Oh,
like
okay, that's two
Miami. They
different.
have the Miami theme.
Okay, yeah, no, see, I have heard of that name, but I don't think I've seen them or really watched. But if you say they got a vibe, then
Well-
that's kind of what I watch for. Is to
Yeah, I mean, because they're kind of basically like they have this setting, right? And
yeah,
I think it's a brilliant idea, by the way. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like it's an easy way. I don't want to say totally easy, but if you have money behind you to build a podcast, it's an easy way to get viewers because you're getting it off of like relationship based things. So you pretty much they get a big podcast table, they get some cameras, they get some camera guys,
yeah,
and then they just invite a bunch of girls in, and they all sit down differently and rotate those weekly,
yeah.
and then talk about relationships, and then they just kind of.
I definitely have seen them before. I feel like you're describing a recent one I saw. Like it kind of had that vibe saying, I'm painting the picture or you're painting it. You know, they're kind of relaxed. There's chicks in the background kind of sitting around. They got that. You said Miami? That's where they are?
Yeah, they're in Miami.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think the guys I saw had that Miami vibe kind of going. So, I mean, honestly, man, is the content kind of like, are they based it on like people like they bring in, or is it more so like they just talk? And they just got an audience and they just kind of go like it's like two brothers just talking.
It's kind of like them bringing on a bunch of different women,
Oh,
and
okay.
people in relationships, and they kind of just debate on modern day dating versus men versus males, and like what does a man want and what do women want, and they try to just use women that they find in Miami off the however they do that, and they try to use them to debate. What men really want, what women really want, and to see, basically kind of showing like a lot of men that, or trying to give them this view that a lot of people may be clueless or women may be clueless in some sense. I think that's kind of what they're permeating, that energy. So they'll get some random person who really just doesn't, I don't know, maybe they don't have like their logic really thought out. And they might not take accountability, and they'll just put them on the podcast.
Accountability is so they kept putting them in the headlights, basically. They're catching them off guard. I'm sure they have some storm offs every now and then.
Yeah, they actually do, obviously, because they're catching people who haven't really thought about the craft.
Yeah. So you coming in like, I'm going to talk over you. I'm going to just talk my piece. I'm going to say my truth. And then they catch you with something that I'm sure they, premeditated, or they know something about you that will trigger you, or they know what you can't respond to accordingly, or have a retort. So they'll drop it on you like a bomb. And honestly, I'm not saying I'm all for that, but I think it's important to have those moments because it gives you self-reflection. Like that chick, like they leave the show feeling like, okay, something got to change. Hopefully, which is taking accountability. One of my bros, that's his favorite word, man, accountability, accountability. And it's the word, I mean, in the grand scheme of other words, but yeah, because sometimes humans don't even know that they never take things like held themselves accountable because they always had an out, whether it's like, I'll just distract or I'll change the topic or I'll blame something, because a lot of people are carrying trauma, a lot of people are carrying drama, but some things that you can control, some people don't want to, like, so if you play victim often, you will walk around with that mentality of you don't think that there's anything in your control, or you don't want to have to be in control. You want somebody to give you something that you feel you deserve or that was taken away from you. So I think those type of shows are good. They're a good window into our culture and, well, not, human culture and men and women. And I think how crazy society, how different we are right now. I think, everybody's kind of an open book, but not by choice, like social media, but you're not really reading the content. You just see the cover. So you're making the cover really jazzed up and you're designing it really well, but you don't want anybody to read through the book, so if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense to me. I get your perspective.
Yeah. So
it's interesting, but yeah, I think like there's podcasts, like that have like a good theme. And I'm not saying like I'm the biggest fan of that, but sometimes I like to just turn it on just to laugh. It's entertainment. I don't take it literal. Right?
Yeah. I love it. I mean, I didn't know how, I would say, how far back do podcasts really go? I mean, I'm sure there's like a pioneer of it, but like, was this like pre-internet kind of or was it like really just created during the internet era in that sense? Or was it kind of like radio was like a big thing, maybe like some secret?
I think like podcasting is just pretty much a radio show or a regular talk show that just became unorthodox or different from the versions that you would typically see controlled by the media.
There we go. We're controlled by the media. That's all right. That makes sense. Because everybody has a voice, especially when YouTube came out, kind of gave everybody a camera, that's dangerous. I mean, we see where we're at now, but when it first happened, I remember as a kid, man, I was in college and I remember being like, YouTube, and there's not going to be nothing crazy. What's on there? Sure enough, I saw the creativity of the planet on full display with no reservations, clearly before they started having their own things, respectfully. But it was definitely cool to see people like, hey, I can finally show the world this. I'm a nobody. But, now you guys can see what a nobody can do out in Kentucky or out in the Netherlands or out like, just a random normal person showing off their product without having to find somebody to push through it or a team or, marketing agency. So I'm all for podcasts in the current day. I just know there's good and bad. I feel like there are definitely ones that I feel like they all do more good than bad, but I know there's some that, like you said, you don't want to be the person that's on the other end of it, like the chicks in what's the name of the show again?
Fresh and Fit.
I'm gonna check them out too, man. Because if you rock with them, I trust. I know I'll like it. I'm sure I crossed over or passed through sometimes through TikTok and probably caught some of those stuff.
I mean, typically what I like to do is I like to just look at, a bunch of different podcasts within a bunch of genres and look for things that I like out of those or like inspiration out of those. And they don't have to be necessarily ones that I believe and follow what they're saying, etc. Like Fresh and Fit, I don't believe everything they say, but it's really entertaining. It's funny. But then when I want to go to like, deep knowledge and thinking, then I'm going to go to something like, Rogan, maybe my podcast or something else like that, or, Lex Friedman. Or if I want to do something more about, my health, I might go to Andrew Huberman. Things like that.
That's awesome.
Right. And if I want to do like stuff like more like culture oriented, like hip hop, things like that, I might watch Joe Budden's podcast or something like that. Right.
You see these new YouTube guys, I guess like No Jumper and all those guys are some subsidiaries, some other guys who are associated with them too. Have you ever, the YouTube elements of it, how do you feel about those culturally? Like, do you think they're kind of like, there's a lot, do you think there's too many of them or do you think there's just enough ones that have inside access who really can put out some good content for people to check out because they don't have the time to find out or research on their own,
What do you mean?
So like, what's the guy's name? There's a few, well, academics, clearly, that's one. Those type of guys, because some people only watch YouTube. Some people don't like have the podcast app, so they don't check it out that way. So YouTube is its own world with like content. So you'll see videos, but they might be also hosting it or putting it on podcasts. So I was just going to say, do you feel like there are gatekeepers in the cultural element? Because, academia, if you have like an intelligence or, ones that want to discuss things that are more so like intellectual, I'm sure there's no cap on that. And anybody can talk about it. Everybody wants to hear about it. You might have people debate in the comment section, but when you have a cultural thing, you have people who might decide who should be able to say or talk about these things. So there's more so a gate, if you catch what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, like, are you asking me, what do I think about that, or?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, do you think that that there is a gate in the cultural world of podcasts or YouTube content?
I think, yes and no. I mean, I think really a lot of people can just blow out of nowhere. It's
All
really
right.
about like what you're saying, like the topic that you're talking about. If you're really talking about something that's like intellectual, I think it's harder. If
Yeah.
you're talking about stuff about dating, I think it doesn't matter where you go on YouTube or something else like that, you're gonna get views.
Yeah.
Dating or anything, any shock value type of stuff is gonna get you views,
Shock value. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You're
Anything
right
about
about that.
aliens is gonna get you views, right?
I'll be the one watching if
Right,
it's worthy. Yeah.
right.
That's right though.
Yeah.
It's awesome though, man. I love seeing content creators, you know, create. I'm a fan of creators. As a creator myself in multiple areas, I love seeing people go out there and put their self on display and like put a face to a name. You know, it's like, hey, that's a vulnerable state, you know, and it's awesome because you got people that can bring up things that maybe you didn't know, or they can do things. And so like seeing the content creator be unapologetically themselves and have like, you know, I hear about the chat, all that matters, the chat. I think that's cool. And people that are older in age or in that mid-age group, you know, not the young gens, but the older ones, I think they are like, this is awesome. Like, these are the talks we had in the barbershop. These are the talks we had in the locker room. So it's like they're like, man, I missed out, you know, not everybody, but I think it's really cool because everybody has a voice and there's a lot of conversations happening all around us all the time, and some of them are just natural and they don't have any politics behind it. And I think that's why podcasts are so beautiful, you know, in that element. And I love it, you know.
Yeah, I agree with you too, man. You can
Yeah.
kind of create your own universe or your own world,
Yes.
but I think like you're also blocked or controlled to some extent based off of the algorithms, you know. I think
Yeah.
there's like guys like Mr. Beast, he might say, well, you know, if you're not putting out good content, you know, people aren't going to watch you. And I think that's debatable because like what is good content is subjective, and
Very.
necessarily and the YouTube, you know, algorithm isn't necessarily going to pick out necessarily what exactly is great content. So it's going to push and base that off of certain, I don't know, certain attributes that it detects, right? So it's
Yeah,
going to
that
say,
makes
okay,
sense.
well, I'm going to look for this, and that's what's going to determine what is a great video, or you know, I'm going to push that to this audience. But it doesn't know exactly what
Yeah.
audience to put it out to exactly for every single person's talent. Like, for
Ooh.
example, podcasting.
Yeah.
Sometimes, or a lot of times, podcasting has a variety of a range of things or topics that it likes to talk about. So if you're on YouTube, for example, does it understand where to actually put you or show you? It doesn't really know. It tries to push you out to immediately, like to your immediate subscribers, and then see what their what the
Reactions.
attention is on that.
Yeah.
And then it tries to, you know, then once it sees the retention there, then it pushes you out to the wider people. I mean, like the greater audience, excuse me. Right.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what it tries to do in some way, from what I understand. And I think like sometimes if you have like a good podcast, or you have a, you know, a topic that's not simple for it to understand, it can kind of not allow you to get the proper audience you would like.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I keep forgetting the algorithms, especially in the day and age of AI. You know, they're really on point. They're really precise when it comes to, like you said, unless you're putting your little hashtags or your little, you know, I mean, it might have the name of the video that's going to be held into account of what genre where you push. But I agree with you. If you don't already have the subscribers, or if you don't already have the people that have eyes on you, then you're kind of thrown out into the metaverse. You know, you just surfing the waves, and some people have bigger boats than you. So your boat might not make it, you know? So you got to buy a bigger boat, or you got to get more people to look at you when you're in the boat from the shore. So I see that too. I mean, I guess that's what, for me personally, as as a musician in that degree, I always knew about the algorithms in that degree when it came to musically, things sonically, and things that, you know, topics. Those are elements that you decide when you get their attention, how long you can hold it. But getting their attention, that's one thing. So I agree with you. How do you start off Are you going to play the same beats? Are you going to play this same game? Are you going to play the same game of what audience? You know, what's your age audience? What's your demographic? What's your location? Where are you at? Are you doing what's trending right now? Or are you trying to bring back something that's 20 years ago? I agree with the algorithms element. Do you play the algorithm game, or do you play with it, or do you play against it, or do you not play it at all? Like, just for you personally, do you think like the algorithms are more powerful than the content creators, or do you think
I think the algorithms are more powerful than the content creators, personally.
Yeah,
because it's like it's not it's and that depends too, right?
Yeah.
It's subjective because it really depends on who you are and what content you're putting out, right? Because the algorithm is going to have its own type of biases.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
So it only knows as much as the perimeters that it's given. Right.
Yeah.
It's not that smart where it just like figures out, okay, blah, blah. No, it says, okay, well, here's a set of criterias, and we're going to judge these things, and that's how it filters out things. And it doesn't know like really what's good. So you don't necessarily get the chance, if you're talking about something that seems to be general based, to automatically hit the masses, because they gatekeep it.
They do. Yeah. There's that word, gatekeep. I agree, man. I agree.
Well, like, for example, like,
I
remember when TikTok during the pandemic, if you got on TikTok during that period of time and you post like every day, you'd probably have millions of subscribers or followers right now. But if you didn't do it at that time, what ended up happening, and I'm saying with decent content, nothing amazing, but just decent content.
Yeah.
Right. You'd have millions of followers by now. But if you didn't do it, if you do the same thing right now, what ends up happening is the algorithm has changed. And so you can be pushing out the same content, but the algorithm, if you didn't get those subscribers or followers prior, then you're not going to grow at the same rate now, because the algorithm has totally changed.
Man. Yeah, that hit. It's like jumping in when it's hot, striking when it's hot, man. I can see that.
When it's not really hot, right? When it's not obviously hot, right? When there's not so much content that's on the platform that it needs as much content to feed to the machine. And once it has so much, it gets full, and it says, well, why do I need to push you out?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I always wondered about that, because, there's so many different people fighting for your attention. There's so many ads, and there's so many algorithms, and there's so many cheat codes and skips, and there's so much now. It's nothing's really organic as it was, outside of the content having the potential aspect to be organic. I don't feel like it's a fair game. Nothing's fair. But as like you just said, coming in late, or coming in, you are just being a prodigy. Sometimes people like fall into like a money pit, or they fall into an idea, or they fall in a video and it's that funny. Now all of a sudden you got to fall in every video you make from now on. Like, the algorithm can select you sometimes, and I feel like some people put out 100 videos and they hit one video and they realize, man, so that's what people want to see. That was an accident. My dog just burped in front of me, and I laughed, and it was just the right time and the right camera view in the right location to where that was hilarious. I have 10 million views now. So now for the rest of my content, I got to do dog videos of dogs, burping. And so it's like, and meanwhile, he has to delete his other 99 that he had before that, because he was wanting to make content about skateboarding maybe, or something. So like, that's where I'm at, because sometimes it can choose you, if that makes sense. And you got to decide at that moment, am I going to pretend that this is what I do up until the moment where I get all of y'all, and then I'm like, psych, back to skateboarding we go? Or am I making dog videos for the rest of my life? I hope my dog, so that's a good way. That's how I kind of view a lot of this. Like, some people, I won't say they sell their souls per se, but I will say, like, sometimes, are you happy making content that isn't your content that you want to make? Like, there's a lot of people I feel like are in that position musically, content wise, podcasts, all types of things. You can get caught in that riff where somebody tells you, trust me, you better keep making these dog videos. You want to go to this party, you want to go, you want to meet these people, you got this check. Do you remember that first check? And I mean, I guess that's a gift. That's a luck of the draw. It's like, there's a lot of people that have, student loan debt and jobs and things they don't have degrees in. it could be how podcasters are or content creators. It's like nobody remembers where they started unless you dig deep and find an old tweet or something. But usually you can just wipe your whole slate and say, okay, I'm making dog videos now. So I would ask you, do you think there's a lot of that too in the content creator realm? Just not just podcasts, but like people that are just doing what works because it worked one time, like TikTok, one video got 10 million views. So that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah, definitely, man. I see it that way for sure. I mean, I know a lot of people that are putting out content based off of the algorithm, right? Whatever sparked the algorithm, they say, hey, well, this worked.
Yeah.
You know, I even see like, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna dig into this a little bit, but I'm gonna say something else. But I even see, I see a lot of people, they change based off the algorithm because they see this as a way of freedom, right? So if they can get paid, money for this, which is what a lot of people's goals are, right? They want to get views, they want to make money off this.
Yeah.
So what they do is like you mentioned earlier, they end up improvising and changing who they are based off of the algorithm. And that's why I don't like the algorithm per se, is because the algorithm begins to, push out, this view of you that's based off the algorithm, right?
Yes, it does.
And
yes, it does.
I don't think that's a good thing. And I think when we start looking at things like, for example, you mentioned how that kind of permeates holistically through, many genres of creativity. You mentioned music or the, entertainment industry in general. It's like, yes, it does do that because it's all about branding and imaging, right? So it's
absolutely
right. So like, for example, let's say this.
Yeah.
You look at somebody, like Drake. Drake, pushes out this persona because that persona is what he feels people want to see.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Persona. Because in his line of work, you have to have a persona that people want to believe at least, or that they don't, that makes it easy for them. Because you don't want to have somebody who's like Weird Al Yankovic really making really good music for real. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Like in that world, you are in a serious hip hop world. So you have to be somebody we can digest or accept that radiates hip hop. Nobody wants to see Weird Al Yankovic really making awesome tracks and like albums and being considered one of the greatest lyricists. You got to keep a persona Weird Al, if that makes sense with him, or you can make funny music like Weird did. He probably made good music too,
but I think what I'm saying is like kind of how you mentioned how, sometimes people change who they are for the algorithm. I think like, at some point that's what people end up having to do. Yeah. Because the algorithm in general pushes that out, or that's what it receives and it likes. It seems to like it. So we feed the algorithm based off what the algorithm likes to get those views. And what I'm saying is there's people, out there who are artists like Drake, for example, who put on this persona because the algorithm likes it, right? The algorithm likes it. So meaning somebody's going to download his singles, etc., Spotify, social media. These things are being liked. So, when people start, bringing up those recent things with like, the rapper Kendrick Lamar and, and Drake himself versus Aubrey and etc. People mocking him for things of, trying to play, gangster when he's really not. Yeah. And then, there's going to be those people who's like, well, that's not gangster, just because he has braids, that doesn't make him gangster. But I think we all understand that there's a world stereotype of what gangster is. So there's some type of line of what people identify. And it's not really what you identified as. Yeah. It's what most people outside of the world identify it as, right? So if you can say, oh, well, this is not this, but it's like when you go outside to the rest of the world that you have to deal with, if they identify it as that, then it doesn't matter what you and your friends or a group of people in your community think of it exactly, because you have to go out to those greater amount of people, right? In general, like you can't stay in your own neighborhood.
That's deep. That's deep. Yeah, that's deep.
Man. You got to go to work.
So the world's a stage, man.
Yeah, it is.
The world's a stage, man. And that's what people got to get, man. It's like, hey, the guy was an actor before he was a rapper, be it he's a good rap, you can be multi-talented. I know a lot of people, myself, people that are famous in that sense of like where we listen to them every day or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like entertainment is entertainment, so people get that twisted. They think you can't be multifaceted. It's like, hey, man, I've seen Prince. I've seen other artists do things that were abstract are all over the place. But if you are good at doing what you do, which is being an entertainer, dude, everything else, man, politics only matter to where you're at. Like you said, like it's only political if you're in that environment. Like if you only can see me on TV, I can be whatever I want. You know, it's like you don't have any say so outside of your ears, and there's billions more ears that are okay with me doing whatever I'm doing. So it's more so like that's why I got into it. Can be cultural, or it can be a hive mentality, you know, and that's why I say if it's not politic related, then all of everything else is just like, hey, at the end of the day, he's a musician. So what matters is what the music is. Now, granted, yes, some of the other things, you know, there's other levels to being what you do outside of being a musician. But for what we're discussing, you know, I will say, yeah, I mean, that is a perception's reality to a degree. You know, the music is still good music to that degree. So it's like no, you know, separation of church and state kind of. It's like, hey, pick or choose. You want to hear some good music, or you want to have a good humanitarian that only does good music. You know, it's like you got to give or take a little bit outside of cultural aspects. But some people don't care. Some people do. That's always going to be the case, you know, with everything, with anything. So
Yeah, and I agree with those things too as well. But I think like where people are is like, I think they're thinking of like things like this. Like for example, you know, entertainment is entertainment, but
Mhm.
people want the entertainer to match whatever they're branding themselves as. And, it's not like somebody like, for example, even Drake is actually pushing out like, no, this is just for show. He's
Yeah.
pushing it out as like, no, this is me. I lived on, I mean, that I've been on the streets persona and all that stuff like that. Like he raps about these types of things. It's like, it's not really, he's not really living a life like that. And, it is
Yeah.
entertainment, but he's also making it like it's his persona, like who he really is. And I think there's a difference.
There's definitely a difference. I've never met Drake personally, so I don't know if, I'm pretty good at reading people. So you can see somebody at some point glitch is what I call it, where they'll show you something that you can't forget, or it's like, okay, from what I see outside of music, I'm seeing a person who's clearly telling you there's two versions. Like, you might pictures are one thing, but if you're hearing him talk and stuff, it's like this is the guy who's like he's not changing up his voice, so he's clearly letting you know, hey, jokes on everybody. I'm acting when I'm rapping, and I'm rapping when I'm acting. I'm doing everything, and y'all are falling into the trap because he doesn't change his voice. It's like if he was changing his voice, then I would say, okay, take it easy, or that's a little weird. But if you're being who you are, rapping, DMX maybe sounded like DMX, RP by the way, all the time. But there's some artists who put on a different voice when they go into the booth, not just hood related or anything, but it's like, they might go up an octave, they go down an octave, they might change up, they might speak a Bonnie's. Like, I mean, Lil Jon, I've seen his high school picture, or, respect that Lil Jon, but it's like, hey, he's a good musician, but, it's like, I'm sure, you saw the Dave Chappelle skit. He was speaking like indubitably and like da da da, and then it's like it's all a stage, man, and like it's all a stage. So I think, as you would say though, if you are speaking on things and putting up a certain persona, people will ask you to address it at one point. I will agree with that. We're just the masses to a degree, to where it's not really us in the mix. I'm sure Hollywood has its own politics that are run where everybody knows who everybody really is, but it's like, hey, if I'm at the party that you're at, who cares? It's like, hey, we all got fans, but hey, I'm at the same party you're at. Me and you know my little secret, but guess what? Hey, you want to shout or not? Who cares? Like, so that's why it's a separate battle going on between the fans being like, I spent this money to hear a gangster rapper. Like, that's the only option. It's like, if you wanted to spend your money to get, like you said, what you paid for, not an illusion. If you go to a magic show, you still pay for the ticket. You're going to see magic. He didn't say if it was real magic or if it looks like magic. It's like, but you paid the ticket to the show, so you got a magic show. So are you going to go home saying that I knew that trick, that wasn't real? Or are you going to go home saying, hey, it looked real, I had a good time. A rabbit came out the top hat. You know, the kids laughed. I had a great time. The magician winks at you at the end, like, see you next time. So that's where I'm at, kind of like that dichotomy of that mixture of reality and what's not reality, you know. And it only matters if you have, I guess, money involved. Like, hey, I got ripped off. Or if you had heart involved, like, hey, I really believed you. I looked up to you. I dressed like you. I talked like you, just to find out it wasn't real. So it's like, which one of those two are you going to really be most disappointed in when you find out your heroes are actually villains?
Yeah, I think it really matters. I mean, I think it really depends. Excuse me. I think like when you start talking about things like that,
That's deep. I mean,
and yeah, right. When
it
you
was
start thinking about things like that, as far as like the entertainment industry, I think it's just really it depends on it's subjective in certain ways. It really depends on what you're doing. If
Yeah.
you're thinking about things like, I would say, for example, like hip hop and rappers, it's negative in a way when you're pushing out a persona and you're really popular because kids actually watch these personas.
Bingo.
And even if you were not like that, you're going to amplify that because you're going to be like, well, fuck, Drake does this. So therefore, I need to be like this. And I need to speak like
man. No, Dipset had a lot of geeks and nerds putting on jerseys, and yeah, man. I mean, I remember that era, so I agree with you, man. Like when you see certain things, it's like you whispering and cursing in your room, your mom can't hear you. Like, hey, I agree, man. You know, some people look up to like really big artists, especially like a Drake type. So you got to be like, I agree with you, man. Continue like being careful about how you move and how it might affect with that power, you know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, and I think what I'm looking at is like, you can do it. Anybody can do what they want to do and push out their creativity any way they want.
Yeah.
Got it. But my point is, in general, is like, what happens when there's misguided youth who are looking up to you, and you're promoting things that are probably some of the negative stereotypes.
Truth. Yeah. Man.
Like, that's not going to help you get a job.
Hey, man, that's why music is really meant for teenagers. Well, let me not say that. Certain music is only meant for people who don't have careers or like really, because we're not taking it that serious, man. It's like I had that phase. Like I just said, we was all dressing jerseys backwards, putting bandanas on, doing crazy stuff like in the room, like none of them, so I agree, man. I think the only people that are really affected, because adults aren't looking at another adult as a hero. I would hope not to that degree,
I mean, I think they are, man. I think if you're
That's
in your
terrifying.
20s, I think if you're in your 20s, you're definitely doing that a lot of times.
Okay, yeah.
Depending on the groups that you hang around with. It depends on who you idolize, right?
Yeah.
If you idolize hip hop culture,
If you're
9 times out of 10, if you're a young adult, you're gonna actually copy some of their style. You're gonna copy their words. You're gonna copy their clothes. You're gonna be copying some of their mannerisms, and you're gonna dance like them. It's just gonna be like.
That's why discernment is important, and also separation. Like, yeah, I'm gonna blast this track when I pull up to work. You know what I'm saying? I'm blasting it in my car every day, like, and then I'm gonna turn off the car and go work for an IT company. Like, it's like you got to have that separation. And I agree with you though, because I think we're growing up later as the years go. Like, times clearly change. Oh, I bought a house when I was 18 in the 1950s. Clearly, we're in the 2024s. You know what I'm saying? People get married later. People graduate. I mean, it's a lot of things happening. So I will say the 20-year-olds now, don't quote me on this, but I could see it being like your mind state is almost lagged behind. Like, since it's taking longer to get to certain places in life, you're still your mentality is a little younger than it was back in the day for other people, because you didn't have to grow up as fast, or it wasn't as different. So I will say they're probably late 20s guys taking it to the heart, which is, man, that wouldn't be good. But it also, like, it depends on who you are as a person though, because if you're in your late 20s but you're successful and you're around a bunch of successful friends, all of y'all can blast the song on the way to the trip, to the beach or something, but you're not going to get out the car and be like, all right, so just like the song said, y'all, everybody strapped up, you got your pole, the pit, your pipe. Like, so I would hope the person can separate from the message. It's like, it's an entertainment, but unfortunately for certain communities and cultures, it's a little bit too real. Like, entertainment rides the line of things that reminds people of things. So if you're in that realm, then you look up to somebody, oh, they can make it and get out. I'm gonna do what they did. And you know what that main realm is in a lot of hip hop music, to get out fast or to get out in general. So you are technically promoting something that you don't have to do anymore. But some people that listen to your music still might have to do that. So like,
Yeah, totally. I think I was literally talking to one of my friends, this guy named Larry out, and he's like living in, Vietnam. He likes to travel and stuff like that.
Nice.
He's like from LA and stuff like that. And he was telling me, I don't know, we kind of got in a deep conversation, and, I catch it with him every once in a while. And we started talking about certain things, and, some of these things we're talking about right now. And it's like, one word that came up to me is like, when you start looking at a bunch of cultures and you start looking at, why, who's successful culturally and why, you start looking at a lot of things like, well, why does that exist? What type of things do they believe in? What type of history did they come from? And why has that not changed? And why has that went down? And why has it kind of stayed the same? And if you start looking at things, it's really just a lot of ignorant cultural practices along with, that came from oppression that kind of just permeated to that culture or those cultures. And it became I guess you would say almost like a cultural belief, right?
Oh, there you go. That's a good one.
Right. So now you've got a culture, or you got a community that's embraced ignorant methods or mindsets because of colonialism or oppression. And now they're saying this is like, it's a good thing. For example, you have people who might have, who have ancestry from slave trade, and they might think, well, it's not good to read, because if you do read, then that's being, white, and being white is bad, because, and speaking like a white person who speaks English is bad, because that is being white, which is kind of weird if you think about it, because if your community or society is not doing as well as the others that are other minorities, how can you sit there and, demonize, what is, correct and what is not correct, especially when you're not speaking a language that is not native. That is pretty much a white language, right? It's like pretty much it is.
Yeah.
It's like, how can you say, well, this is talking white? Well, if you're speaking English, you're talking white.
Yeah. See, now we're stepping on people's, that's when you get in somebody's soul. When you break down to shit to a compound form, and like you explain to them what it stemmed from. I do that too sometimes, but I like how you use just colonialism, like just in this broad sense, because it really does blanket over a lot of shit that is people do shit. It's a genius way to put it, actually, man. That's dope, because you're explaining what happened. You're explaining it to its correct terminology. Everything else is emotion. And that's a lot of people's biggest thing, I think, man. When you deal with PTSD and trauma, I do believe that things carry through blood and DNA. I do believe that energy isn't created nor destroyed physically, whatever, in that physics term. But I do believe that things carry themselves through generations. So I will say that things that might have been survival mode can carry on into your offspring's DNA. Now you're doing things and they're doing things, and it's like, why are we doing this? We live in the suburb, like, we're like, so it's like, but there's something that needs to be discussed, and that's like you just said, trauma, survival mechanisms, coping mechanisms, all types of things, man. I think people are afraid of what the culture might do to you if you were doing this. It might be a projectional standpoint, like, hey, if you talk like that, you want to end up with somebody who looks like you, that might lower your chances, or you might pass by some things, or maybe your grandma might laugh at you, or just people think you're weird. Like, it's families protecting the offspring, but in reality, you're not. But it's like, what do you do in that certain degree of like protection versus neglection, where it's like, hey, I'm doing what I think is best, and maybe you could show me one day that I was wrong, but I got to get you to get to that point first, which is, I'm going to give you the cold-hearted, truth. I'm going to give you this tough love so that you don't stumble on the way or get your heart broken or get the wrong crowd or something. It's like, that's why it's kind of like, it's a really soft, touchy subject, if you catch my drift. But I do agree with you. The colonialism and colonizing element of the planet, not just us, just the planet. It's like every dog has its day. We had that talk in the last cast. You know, we were discussing civilizations and cultural things and why we do things and people not knowing why they do it. I think it's something that this should be discussed at a very large table from all over. It should be every walk of life. Like there were different tribes in Africa. There's different tribes in America in its own sense. We all different dialects, different upbringings, different mentalities, different, still to the core the same, but it should be a round table conversation. You know what I mean? When I say round table, like everybody have every type of walk of life, sit down and discuss. And then you'll realize a lot of things are based off emotion.
Right, but I think a lot of people just, react emotional and they don't actually think logic. So I think like you can have a
No.
round table, but if the crowd or the group is just emotional and they don't really hold themselves accountable or they don't really think about why they do something and how something is wrong collectively as a
They'll
group,
glitch.
then I don't think
They'll-
it does anything, right? Because there's a lot of
Well,
people that can
yeah.
think of things, but if you look around like this, watch this for a second, Daryl.
Gotcha.
If you look around, the things that I'm even just bringing up, how come no one's actually just fucking like holistically thinking of this shit? Like it's just obvious.
It's
Like, what
very
does that
obvious.
even mean? Like it's just weird. Like let's do everything that's possibly backwards to help your people
Yeah.
not progress because you don't own stuff like that. Like you don't own
Yeah.
buildings, you don't own properties, you don't have control of the tech sector, you don't have
Yeah.
control of the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
If you're not in control of a sector or an industry, or you don't have power within it, how can you go around and, and start saying, well, if you do it this way, then it's, you shouldn't do it that way. But you got to work, you got to make money. And like, even I was looking up a word, for example, it's called code switching. I'd heard this before. And so when I looked at code switching, I wanted to look up what the terminology of what code switching was or the definition. And here's like one of the first ones I found. It basically says broadly, code switching involves adjusting one's style of speech, appearance, behavior, and expression in ways that will optimize the comfort of others in exchange for fair treatment, quality, service, and employment opportunities. So when I think about that, I'm kind of confused.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean optimize comfort for others? Like, what the fuck do you mean? Like, how are you going to get a job? Like, what do you mean you optimizing is code switch? Optimizing? Like, what do you mean? Why are you optimizing? You need to, if you need to work, you need to optimize. If you need to make money, you need to optimize.
Was that only for work? Like, did they kind of say like this is only work related? Because if it is, that's goofy. It's like
I think that's what they kind of like push it as. Like code switching is more about not exactly work, but broadly code switching involves adjusting one's style of speech, appearance, and behavior and expressions in ways that will optimize the comfort of others in exchange for fair treatment.
Is that only under the conditions of certain cultures or races?
Well, it just says in general, quality of service and employment opportunities. And my thing like that is like, what's weird about that is like optimizing yourself for fair treatment. I mean, like, no, we're talking about if you want to speak a Nigerian dialect or language within there or whatever it may be, would you want to speak it? Don't speak Nigerian like a Nigerian. Don't speak Nigerian like a Nigerian. You're speaking Nigerian like a Nigerian. I dare you. I would
say, I'll give you an example. So, because that makes sense. I guess if it's changing up, which I guess changing up is, that doesn't make sense either. All right, I'll give an example.
I think what I'm saying like this, for example, watch him for a second, Daryl.
All right.
I think what I'm saying is like this. If I didn't create a language, right? And it's not my cultural language, but now I've adopted it or I want to speak it or I have to speak it in order to communicate effectively within that culture to survive, to do business. Wouldn't I want to be able to do that at its highest level? Why would I push my friends and my people or my group or whatever it may be into doing it in the least way possible and to doing it in an original way and changing something that wasn't yours? I guess you could say, oh, well, it's to keep a culture. It's to keep some type of substance or add flavor to it. And it's like, okay, that's cool. But at the same extent, what are you really doing for, the opportunity of your offspring? like when they have to grow up and live in a system. Everybody's living a system. Everybody's trying to sell something. So for example, if I need to go sell something to people in France, am I going to go ahead and remix it and say, you know what, I'm going to speak French my way? And if anybody comes up to me and says, hey, that's not how you pronounce that word. No, what do you mean? Like, I do it my way. Like, my way is the right way. Like, are you trying to change who I am? You know, because you're going to judge my quality of who I am. So I'm going to code switch to speak French the proper way. And then I'll go back to my way of speaking French later.
I would hope that's not the case.
But I mean, I think in a way that's what it exactly says, right? Because if you're saying code switching, you're saying that you're changing the way that, you know, you've changed, or wherever you grew up around, changed the way English is basically spoken, and it maybe not be the correct way that it's, you know, was built for, but you changed it your own way.
I see where you're getting at.
Now you're telling everybody that your way is the right way.
So what if you switch it backwards? Because I could see that not being code switching in this like in this entirety. But what if it was you're going into an area where now you speak English in a way that is taken this way, like Geechee or something. So you have a guy who comes down there and says he wants to get a job, and he's in it, which it never goes the other way, if you catch my drift. So it's like, so when you're there, it's like all of a sudden you got Tom, and Tom is like, hey, like, you know, like he's speaking a dialect that doesn't come from anything, but that's code switching in my mentality. I just learned the term all the way. So it's like, that's why I said, are you coding up or are you coding down? Are you punching up, punching down? Like, which way are you going with it? Because if you're punching up, like you said, it meets at the end of this is how proper English is spoken from the parliament, from the old days, for whatever. So, but if you're going down, it's like, okay, I'm going into areas that people might not have had proper knowledge. So I'm saying less words to make them cozy, which is code switching. So that's how I take it. I feel like it's always going maybe the other way. So that's why it was created. You know, we were real creative. So it was like, no, you talking like this now. But in reality, it's like, what guy would, you know, we're always in a different element to where we're going to this side to get the jobs. They're not going to this side to do jobs. So you're always going to be in the element that you're going to look like you code switching. That's reality.
Right. And I think my point in general, though, is
that was awesome, though. That was but go ahead, sir.
No. And I think that, and I understand that point too. I guess what I'm saying is, like, I'm not saying that people should change their dialect or their way of speaking and etc. But you have to understand that there's going to be some backlash when you go into certain rooms. If you're a person who goes to France and you want to do business with a person who speaks French at a high level, and you want to make money in France, most likely you probably want to be able to speak it at its highest level, or, you know, people might say something about it.
Absolutely.
Now, would you call that code switching because you need to be able to, you know, communicate with, you know, people in France in the highest level and speak it with quality?
I don't think that is. I think it's an American. I think that code switching has limitations, I would say. I didn't look at the terminology. I think it's more of a cultural code switching, because clearly on paper that wouldn't make, you want to get the best, set yourself up for a position to optimize success. Like, if you're in a job, who wants to fail? I'm a salesman. Like, if I know this guy likes this type of thing, I might bring it up during the conversation, or I might come, you know, it's like, you sell yourself first, but it's like you're conducting business. You know, they can take their business elsewhere. You want to present to the highest degree you can. So speaking fluid French or speaking a language in this to respect where you are, will give you a higher success rate.
Right. So, because like I said, for me in general, if you didn't create the language or your culture didn't create the language, how are you going to tell somebody you're code switching when it's not even your fucking language?
That's good, man. I mean, that's why I said it can only go one way. It can't go. I don't see it going two ways. It's a flawed. Sorry, whoever created it, please forgive me. But to my boy Tay, man, it's a flawed thing. It's a flawed creation. I think it's you know.
I feel like people aren't like, this is what I'm talking about in the beginning. I feel like people aren't like, they're not thinking about the things that they say or that they adopt, and they just do it because other people around them have said it. And this is how you kind of control and oppress people mentally, is if you just go and spread a bunch of propaganda and ignorance to certain groups or friends or tribes or communities, etc. And you eventually their kids will just start permeating that same ignorance.
Absolutely.
And,
Yep.
so when you go tell somebody, for example, you tell a slave, hey, look, slave, you can't read and reading is bad. Guess what the slave ends up doing? Teaching its kids that, you know what, if you learn, that's for white people.
I mean, it's sad how powerful the mind is, man. The mind is a very powerful thing. 1 second. Sorry about that. Yeah, man. It's very scary how powerful the mind is and how you can always not know where your thoughts are coming from. It's like inception, planting seeds, man. Like it can be subliminal, it can be fast, it can be right in your face. But when it comes from a person that is your creator or that is your blood, it hits a lot harder, like it sticks a lot harder. So like you said, people that are passing down things that they don't know why they're doing it. If you're being a parent, and that basically goes to show a lot of people, not everybody has it figured out when they have a child. So like you could be in the worst time of your life. You could be in survival mode and trying to teach a child, but you practice what you preach. It's like, how goofy do I sound telling this kid to do something I ain't even doing myself? You know what I'm saying? So you got hundreds of years of people like, my kids watching me. I'm gonna tell you to be a man, but I'm getting punched in the face by a man in front of you. And I'm trying to tell you to be a man though. Like, it's like, but dad, I'm gonna deal with this when I get older. So like, are we fighting reality? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why that got dark. That got deep, but it was like, hey man, that just hit me.
No point, Chris Tucker.
Yeah.
This rock, sorry.
Yeah, I was like, hey man, that got deep, man. But but it makes sense, right? Like, who as a parent, if you turn into a parent, the child is seeing the world that they were born into, speaking in those terms. Speaking in times that while you things are passed down, past life regressions, all types of like, people feel like they don't know why they do things. But I feel like I agree with you, man. Like if you sit down in a holistic mode or in a high mentality or in a conscious mentality. So I think meditating is important, man. I think sometimes people
just like self-awareness is just lacking in the world. And that's why I kind of make fun and jokes of everything. Nothing in this world is real because if you really start questioning things, nothing makes sense. And people don't question the rules that someone else taught them. They don't even think about them.
Because they know the consequences.
I don't even care about the consequences.
Yeah.
It's just like, I mean, actually, I do care about the consequences. Let me take that back. But I'm just saying, I guess I'm not focused. I am focused a little bit on the consequences because I think they hand in hand, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But I think like in general, it's just like when people just aren't self-aware, just to even question, like, why do people do this? And why do people say this? And is this right or is this wrong? And then really just like wake up from it. But people are not questioning things that they've just passed down. They just start saying stuff.
I agree, man. Survival, like, because most people, when you got that teenage year, those are some very serious years, man. They can make a break. Nobody talks about it. But if you really think about it, it's like, you as a kid, your parents, you just roll on what they tell you, you get older. Now you got to do things that, okay, I want to attract this girl's attention, or I want to be in the cool club, or now you grow up into now the work. Eventually your parents, what they think is cool don't matter anymore. Then you start to see that, or like, then you start to say, all right, how can I survive when it's my time to leave the coop? What my parents were talking about doesn't fly in this day and age now. I can't do that in school and wear these shoes they were wearing in the 50s because if I'll get picked on, it's like, I got to fight for myself too. So that's how you can start adopting the wrong mentalities. If you got a alpha or like Lord of the Flies type situation where you got a guy who's molding, because there's always every school, so like every public school system, I would think they have their structure. You got hierarchies, you got the jocks, the cool kid. You got to think they already put you in subgroups and categories without even knowing. Like, you don't even have a say so. If you're athletic, you're a jock. If you're not, you're not. Like, that's it. So it goes to show you how life works. If you're smart, you are. If you're not, you're not. So kids got to deal with how I'm gonna deal with that. So they figure out ways in the middle. And I feel like when you said because we're so wired differently, like Homo sapiens as a species. I'm not saying all hominids are created equal or whatever the hell is going on this earth, but I will say we forget that That's why I brought up the DNA blood lineage thing. I feel like some minds are really wired to a whole different place. And yes, influence through life can help rewire and do things too. But like innate abilities are real. Being born with certain abilities are real. Being born with certain talents are real. How you hone it is up to you. But seeing another human, and I think it's just more haves than have nots. When I say that, I mean it's more people that have no fucking idea why they're doing what the fuck they're doing. Pardon my French. And then there's people who do. And I think you're one of them. And I would like to think I am. The people that do, the haves and the have nots. You realize that it's a lot more the masses, the NPCs that people joke about now, that whole terminology. Some people don't have the ability to be a trendsetter or a decision maker or a light, a beacon of light. And some people don't want to be. And that's just the harsh reality, you know. Like when you're a beacon of light, you have two options. I'm going to be a beacon of light or I'm going to pretend I'm not. People that don't have the option, I mean, I don't think they even pretend to be one. They just want to not be seen. They just get with the herd, you know, so they don't get picked apart.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, you know, trying to fit
That's
in
dark.
with the herd. And I
Yeah,
think
fit
the
in with the
reason why
herd.
people try to, they try to fit into the herd, but then they end up, tricking themselves into a
Getting
bunch
trampled.
of things,
No, sorry, man. But yeah, I agree. The
yeah.
herd. I don't know, man. What would you say and I have to ask you because you got a really deep perspective on these things, you know, like a lot of people don't. So that's a gift, but you chose to hone that gift, to have that outward look on things and take a second back and say, what's happening out here? You know? And I feel like life catches people slipping so fast and sometimes that they never had a chance to sit back and say, whoa, what's happening? You know, I think there's some dice involved with when this thing we call life. Some people, something happened, 15 years old, boom, now you're working full time. You know, you had no say so. You can't have a time to sit back and think about holistic views or people, you know, it's like you're sitting in a position where you could be homeless tomorrow. And I have friends that I discuss these type of comments when we go really in depth, man. But it's always like, for me, I always like to look at it in a realistic standpoint and not just my standpoint, because that would make me not be a true human being in its essence if I ignored that a lot of this shit is luck. A lot of this is dice. We got to be honest, man. You got 8 billion people on Earth. People are born and dying every second, man. So it's like, this is luck to a degree. What you do with that roll, with that dice roll, with that hand you got played, that's what you do with it. Unless you just knew how to play poker when you first got handed those cards, you might fold. And that's just how I view a lot of things as a cultural, as a universal, as a humanistic standpoint. There's not enough communication. And the only communication I see is bad communication. So we can't fix a relationship with each other, which is mankind, when nobody wants to hear the other person's side or everybody thinks they're right. And it's like, bro, we're all toxic. You're a toxic girlfriend. You're a toxic boyfriend. Okay, let's see some therapy. Some people got different ideas of what therapy is. It could be God, spiritual, money, greed, the other side. But nobody's communicating, man. I mean, the Tower of Babel type music, like we got spread out and we still out here dancing in our own puddles, man. So that's kind of like my take on, you know, the rage I get when I see people not trying to at least ask the question. I have a little bit of grace when I know some people never had to say so.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too, man. I just feel like a lot of people just like, and I'm not saying I'm like, oh, I'm this person who's just so woke, because I don't believe in wokeness. I think that's silly.
Yeah, I hate that word.
No one is actually woke. Everybody's pretty much asleep, right? Nobody's really woke. Like,
I hate that term, man. Forgive me who created that. You know.
yeah, I'm just saying,
You
like,
know, nobody signed up for
wokeness,
that.
that supposedly woke movement is not really woke. It's still people hiding the variations of truth.
Yeah, you
And
wouldn't have
nobody
a
really wants to
title.
hear it. If you go to somebody who's supposedly woke and you tell them what's really the truth, they will crumble.
Yeah,
Because they're not really
reality
woke.
bites.
Yeah,
Have
well,
you ever
reality bites, but it's also this, Morley. It's that, people want to believe that they're woke. People want to believe that they're enlightened. But when you show them that they're not enlightened, they get frustrated and they feel some type of cognitive dissonance, right? They kind of block themselves and they start struggling in turn. They get angry.
Why
They
do you
want to
think
fight
that?
you, like, and they start yelling at you and they scream. And there's reasons behind that. And it's because what you just said, they know it's true, but it doesn't resonate for what they want to believe.
Because it makes it harder. Accountability, having to go take that next step. They don't want to. Yeah, they
It's
have to
easy to
face.
believe whatever is around you.
Yeah, because it's been working for them or not working. I would hope that somebody that has it not working is not going to scream when you try to give them some advice that might help them. I can't see. I call it glitching, man. I use that term a lot. I know it's already a term, but I use it now with humans, and it's like, and it fits, man, a lot more than it used to, man. I don't know why, but people glitching, it fits a lot to the current day, like you just said, showing somebody who claims a topic or a title. First of all, I don't believe in titles. I mean, on a human level, yeah, if you want to know how to address me, I will tell you what I do professionally or what I do, but I don't hide behind a title. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've been doing this for eons, man. Like, my soul is my title. You hang around me long enough, you'll catch on to what my title is. But if you want me to have to give you a title because it makes you comfortable, here you go. Like my name. We didn't choose our names. Our parents created our names. Some people grow up and say, I don't feel like this is my name. Some people love their name. Some people hate them. But does the name define your soul? Is your soul your soul? So if you meet a person and they have something positive to give, like you meet a person and they're glitching when you're telling them about themselves and you're like, you're wrong. Hate to break it to you. Your grandma was wrong. Your mom was wrong. Like, you give somebody that, yes, they're going to glitch because, like, you're breaking down all their comfort barriers. Like, everything that helps them go to sleep at night is cognitive dissonance or coping mechanisms. So they have to figure out, just like you taking their teddy bear, it's like they're going to punch you. Like, if you take a kid's teddy, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it is. It's a glitch reaction that stems from our past, man. Like, as children, like whatever we saw, and I hope, but go ahead.
No. And I'm not trying to interrupt you on this, but like, I think like what I'm saying is like, there's so many ignorances. And I feel like when you've been if you come from an oppressed culture or upbringing, no matter if it was or some type of abuse of some sense, because oppression kind of like goes hand in hand with abuse.
Yeah.
If you come from that, it's really hard to really think like to go to that person for moral and a lot of how do you say this? A lot of really solid lessons in lives, right? Because they're not really understanding the system and how everything works within the system.
Yeah.
Because they're the last persons or people to actually, get that information.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is when you're the last in line to get information, you end up getting information, obviously last, but then it also, how does that affect, people in general? Like if you're living in a house, right?
Yeah.
And everybody else's house, was receiving information early, but your house was the last house to get information. By the time it's gotten to your house, it's pretty much, it's probably changed dramatically.
Yep.
And now you're listening to those people in the same house, and those people in the same house, those are the ones you're looking for, when it comes to knowledge and wisdom. And it's like their knowledge and wisdom is based off of abuse.
Man, they got to go out and get honestly.
Sadly, you have to go back into other houses who may have understandings of that system on a first page level and understand how they're doing things first, and then try to push that through your house, right?
Were you like that? You think, not interjecting, but do you think like you took away, like you learned early how the world works, where you said, I'm gonna take everything that I see from anybody who's offering, or did you think, or was it kind of all inclusive? Like you already had it kind of where you were the house that started off the trend, or were you the house like in the middle, or were you were you like, did you realize at one point, I need to grab something from every house?
I think I just knew that like from like, it just happened, and it was just who I was in general.
Yeah.
Always since I was a kid. I've never been the person who would just like turn the door or shut the door if there was a Mormon knocking on the door.
Yeah.
I've never been the person who would shut the door if somebody was a gangster. I would never be a person who shut the door if there was some dude who's saying he was a racist person. I would just listen to people and hear them out and try to figure out why they thought what they thought.
Yeah.
And just if they were open to having a debatable conversation, just going back and forth. And you realize that eventually people learn some things from you.
Yeah. You can change your life, man.
it can change people's lives tremendously. And then that changes their kids'
Yeah.
because now they're open up to different things that they never thought about or sides that they never even understood. Because before, anytime they just mentioned something to somebody, they automatically shunned them. And so that pushed their anger, that increased their anger, that justified their reasoning, right?
Yeah.
You know, if I say all these people are, you know, bad people, you know, and then you try to interact with people and say, hey, all these people are bad people. And then one of those people says, well, screw you and attacks you. What are you going to think?
Yeah. Man, that's what I wanted to hear, man. It's the same here with myself, man. Like, I feel like we think that we're just absorbing, but in reality, we're pushing energy out too, man. It's like it's a yin and yang. I think a lot of people that I've encountered in life in the past, regardless of when it was or what position we were in at that time, that open door mentality you have moments where it can bite you in the ass and shit. But for the main part, it's like I never cared about that because some beacon of lights, as I mentioned earlier, which is coming right back around, caveat, when you let your little light shine, man. You know, a lot of people, I heard that we grew up in the church. I heard I'm gonna let it shine. A lot of kids didn't really catch that. That just meant if you don't let anybody put your flame out before you before you take flight, you know. And a lot of kids do, a lot of teenagers do, a lot of adults do. The moment somebody points at the flame and says, "You think you're better than me?" or you think, or not even just that. If you are proud with your flame, and they're flickering, they're about to go out, but you go over there and help them, keep it lit, vice versa. Like you never know how much you give out there, man. And I think I knew when I was young too. And
I'd like to say, like, for me, I think that's, I'm going to add a law to there. You know, there's 48 laws, but I'm going to add a law of, distraction, a law of assignment, right? Where there's assignments who just want to detract you from wherever your goal may be. If they see that you figured out a way how to get out of the bucket.
Yeah.
You figured out a way how to get out of a bucket. Daryl has figured out a way how to get out of a bucket, and he's on his way out. And then there's a bunch of people, and you typically see this in poverty, mindsets, is where they start saying, hey, look, Daryl, he was poor like me. And Daryl's starting to get his way out. He's figuring out how to almost climb out the bucket. Holy shit. Well, you know what, Daryl? They're never going to accept you. They're never going to accept you. They don't like who you are, Daryl.
Yeah, man.
You're never going to be one of them, Daryl. You're always going to be one of the crabs in the bucket. And what is that
feels
about?
Real crabby in here.
Right. But
I'm allergic to crab, luckily, so I don't know about crab talk. But to the crabs out there, I will say, yeah, man, there's buckets, man. The buckets. It's funny. I never really heard the crabs in the bucket mentality until I came to Columbia or to college. Ironically, I don't know how I skipped that, but I will agree with you, man. Honestly, I was always in a position where I wasn't doing. We were good, but we weren't. There's levels and everything in life, but but I was still I was still around everything, so I was cool with everybody. And I learned a lot from being cool with everybody. It's a gift and a curse.
Oh yeah, it is. But I think what I'm saying, as well as if you think about things like this, Daryl, for example, if you hear people say things like this person's not going to accept you, they don't like you, those are almost abusive tactics for crabs that are at the bottom of the bucket to pull you back so you don't go any further. Daryl, don't you keep on climbing out that bucket, Daryl. They're not going to accept you, Daryl. They're going to kill you.
The crab is hiring.
Right. But Daryl, maybe you're not looking for acceptance. Maybe you don't want to be by any of those people that you're talking about. It's maybe Daryl, you just want to fucking be Daryl.
That's already enough. It takes a lot, man.
You need to have acceptance.
And that's what you got to think. Who do you think the crabs are? You think it's crabs your age, or you think it's crabs like the elders? I
think crabs. I think you're gonna have a variety of crabs. You have a variety of crabs of demographics. You have crabs your immediate surroundings and your age. You're gonna have crabs that are obviously older. And then you're gonna have them. I don't think there's an age range, but I think typically we might stereotype older people of being stuck in their ways. But I think that depends on who you're talking about, who's older.
Mm.
A lot of older people do kind of regurgitate stuff that, you know, they know that is not helpful. But then there's
Yeah.
a lot of older people who will tell you, hey, you know what? You ask them a deep question, ask them a solid question. Depends on the question. You ask them a question like, hey, what do you regret? If you had to go back in life,
Yeah.
what would you regret? You're going to get your fucking answer right there.
Mm.
You're going to get the real answer, the raw answer of them.
That's what I like doing to people, but I don't do it because I'm not like I'm always a person. I don't punch down. I don't punch up. I don't throw stones. And like I'm just like, hey, man, I want you to be a good soul and a human. And if we can meet on that level, then I want, like, let's talk. Let's be cool. Like, just talk. Like, or don't, you know, at the end of the day. But I agree with you on that sense, the different tiers of crabs. I will say what's scary is that's just like how I view everything, like energy, good and evil, yin and yang, whether you want to go biblical or whether you want to go scientific, however you want to go about it, man, there's always a cause and effect and a positive and negative in anything that goes about the universal language. So I will say, just for as many crabs as I probably encountered, I also saw a couple crabs that were hanging onto the ledge that didn't want to get out the bucket yet. And I was like, hey man, what you do? Why you ain't jump yet? And they're like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm leaving something behind or something, you know. Man, I'm scared. I don't know what's on the other side. I'm the crab that'll push, that'll talk to you about it and be like, hey, maybe, you know, I didn't think about when I got up there yet, but you're already up there. So it's like, hey, you know, go over. Or I would go up and say, hey man, you're not alone. So there's two ways to look at it.
Well, I think there's other crabs too who look at it as like, you know, one crab got out of the bucket and now
there can be no more.
You know, they have a guilty conscience. Well, there can be no more, but also a guilty conscience of, you know, the crabs that are still in the bucket. You know, bro, you said you would come back for us, or you owe me something. Like, bro, why didn't you come back for us? Okay, he's not a good crab. He's just a sellout crab. He didn't come back and get us. You know, he let us here to die. And it's like, no, pull your fucking britches up, collaborate, join on top of each other, work as one, and help get each other out of the help each other out. And eventually, once mostly everybody's out, you're down to your 2 or 3. That one other crab, you know, and all the other crabs up there, eventually they will have enough power to come back and pull that one crab out. If they work together. But you have to work and get out of the crab. You have to work on getting all crabs out of the bucket first.
Yeah, and that's the thing. People were like, who put the crabs in the bucket to begin with?
Well, I'll tell you who put the crabs in the bucket. Once you create a system.
Why are crabs in a bucket? They're supposed to be on the beach. That's why you get my drift. Yeah.
No, I get it. I totally do. But I think the problem is, who put the crabs in the bucket? That's when you create a system. That's when you create a civilization. So once you create a civilization, you create your own bucket. And those who make it out of the bucket are the ones who benefit off of it, or who have, you know, learned to benefit off of it, or who made it out, etc., or who may have never been in the bucket. Right?
Yeah.
It depends on where you are in life, because some people are automatically born out of the bucket. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm
in the bucket.
Yeah. Some people they're eating at the table, and some people are on the table. It's like, so yeah, man, some crabs are pets, some crabs are dinner.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah.
That was something. Say that one more time.
Some crabs are pets, some crabs are dinner.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah,
that hit, man. I felt that one too. I don't like saying the darkness, man. Like, it's like a sinister energy, but like, it's truth, man. Like, speaking truth is what the universe was meant on. You can't. And I agree with you, man. I don't know the end game when it comes to looking to, you know, trying to be so positive about it to the degree where you forget what this earth is built on. It's built on money.
Right.
When it really breaks down to it, it's built on money. It's not built on anything else. You are defined by the money you make as a man on this planet, women too. So nothing else matters. And it's put in a position where you could be in a position where you might never be able to do the money that just stretch your money as long as somebody else's till you can. So you got people who give up before they even know it. Like, their mindset is already in a place of, I've never seen it like this, so I can't comprehend it. You know, like, I never understood financial literacy. I never understood financial freedom. I never understood stock. Like, so it's like, and unfortunately, our school system publicly, you're not going to get that from there. You're not going to get. So it's like, with that being said, the youth of the nation, wherever you were coming out of, your subgroup, 9 out of 10 times you're gonna stay in that subgroup to a degree, if that makes sense. Because why, like, it's, if you know everything might be against you, then why run towards it, if that makes sense? Like, why? And that's not the case for me or anything like that, but I have seen other elements of why people do and why people don't, and the world isn't helping them do. You know, everybody's okay with, like, I need another blank, I need another shoe shiner, I need it. So nobody's gonna help you do. It sure wasn't the school you went to. You know what I'm saying? Unless you went to a private school, you were homeschooled or something. But, like, you know, we in the South where I'm at right now. So in this position of life and reality, I know what time it is. I already see the social constructs and the behaviors and crabs in the bucket and where they coming out of and what matters and where you're from, who your mom and dad, like. So I see it from a far distance, man. The kids probably seeing it every day at school. I mean, you know, we've been in school. You experienced it down here a little bit. So I can imagine, man. But, like, that mentality, you got a crossroad when you're done, man. And academics, you know, having an intellect gets you to at least you can prepare for the mountain or what you're going to experience a little better. You can brace for it, like the crabs in the bucket mentality. If you at least have some intellect with it, you can see that we're not getting anywhere in here. I got to start climbing up this little free empty space right here on the side. Maybe if I get up to the top, I can scream and tell everybody, yo, climb this rope. Or you can have somebody looking at you saying, would you think you faster? You better, like, no, they pull the rope down. You still hold on to it. Now you back in the bucket. Like, so that whole mentality and that whole metaphor, I think it's a really powerful one if you break it down, because it doesn't have any race barriers in a worldwide stance. Like, there's caste systems everywhere. So it's like some people just want to know that there's crabs in the bucket. Like, you know, so I don't see a resolve outside of what I suggested about the big round table aspect. Even if somebody's screaming and cursing and having an emotional breakdown and glitching, be like, hey, the doors are locked. You can't leave this room until you say your piece. Calm down, stop screaming. Let's talk. That's how you do it. Otherwise they're gonna scream. Let them scream. That's a tantrum. Kids throw tantrums. They don't know why, but you don't know either. But guess what? You got an ensemble of humans here that say, "Hey, it's his turn now. Are you done screaming and hollering? Okay, we'll get back to you in a second. Let him go." I just think their communication has to be implemented for a successful structure to be established. Otherwise,
Right. I mean,
you know,
I think that you have, like, for example, I think you have, Daryl, I think you have, like, like you kind of said, like, these levels of crabs in a bucket, etc. But at the same time, crabs out of the bucket. And I think what ends up happening is, even when you get out of the bucket, you have other crabs who are wanting to put you back into the bucket.
facts. Yes.
So
Yes.
you're never going to leave the crabs or
That's deep.
these negative and positives that you're going to encounter in life. There's always going to be a challenge.
That's
because
deep.
there's going to be people, hey, don't you belong in the crab? I mean, don't you belong in the bucket, bro? Like, what are you doing here? So there's always going to be that type of person outside of the bucket.
Oh man, now that's deep. What level of bucket do you think buckets only exhibit from I guess a social background or financial background or status, or does it have some race involved, or is it a mixture of both? Class system only? What do you think?
Well, first of all, obviously, race is Eurocentric thing that's kind of created and permeated in the past,
but it's
500 years, and it has been mutating throughout that time. But, so I think anybody who's truly
American wise,
educated,
sir. Yeah.
Yeah, I think anybody who's truly educated doesn't really entertain that type of labeling, right? For example, you know what I mean? I mean, well, in general. And when we start talking about things about, like, is it classism or et cetera, I think overall it's collectively all those things, because it's things that you were taught to use to discriminate others, right? And everyone's not going to do it, but the ones who are the detractors to push you back in the bucket or hold you down in the bucket, those are all detractors. There are detractors in the matrix who want to stop your progress, right? They want to confuse you. They want to pull you off from wherever you're going. So if they see you moving in a certain direction of positive, energy, they're there to, detract you back into the bucket or to pull you back down into the bucket. So if you're out of the bucket, I want to push you back into the bucket. Or if you're, climbing out the bucket, I want to pull you back down, and hopefully you'll die here with the rest of them. And I think you have like these two types.
That's a good one. That's a deep one just now.
Yeah.
That die with you thing, that was kind of deep, man. That hit. I see what where you're going with that.
Yeah, but that's literally what it's about. It's about, I want you to suffer like me.
Or I don't want to suffer alone.
Yeah. I mean, you have these like, even when, like, let's even entertain like racial politics.
Yeah.
And these racial politics.
I'll use that term to help people understand, to get it.
Oh yeah, for sure. If you start talking about racial politics, you have again, you have the you're a minority too police.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And those are detractors within, the bucket, or, they can be out externally, out of the bucket and, in similar levels, or they can be internally in the bucket at the bottom, where we'll do that. They're the police. They're the race police. And they're oh, you're one of these people too, you're French too, bro. Who do you think you are? Oh, you're Nigerian too, bro. What are you talking about? So it's used to shun people and to stop people from having any type of diverse opinion that opposes the masses, whether they agree with them or not, or whether it's healthy or not. It's automatically used to shut them up or to push them back down into the bucket. Because therefore, if I mention something about your group or the caste system that I put you in, or some colonialization structure put you in and labeled you as, now therefore you're going to answer to whatever that label tells you, and how they need to respond, how they need to act, who they need to vote for, and so on and so on. And you're programmed.
Yeah. So this
because you allow it to program you. As I told I was just talking in my previous podcast with this one guy named Charles, and I was talking to him about labeling, and I might have said this to you before, but one thing that I always learned in my computer science class was that if you want to declare a variable, from my professor who said this one time, if you want to declare a variable, you have to give it a name or to have value. And again, like I said many times, a lot of people really didn't understand how that correlated with the world and how that correlated with colonization, labeling things. We also look at Darwin, how he had to label things and put things in organizations and titles.
Value, man. That's genius. Good.
So who's giving you value is my point.
If then.
As soon as somebody labels you, my point is like this. As soon as someone gives you a name and a label, and you didn't label or name yourself this, they've given you a value. So you allow somebody else or some people or some groups or system to give you a label of a value. And so when you answer, So when you answer to that label, right?
No,
you have answered to whatever they have assigned you with.
That's the computer system, though. We're all variables. Well, that's the computer system. You're right. That's a genius way to put it, man. But here's the thing. If you don't answer to it, that means that it does not compute, which means they got to delete you from the system. They got to rewrite the if-then code now. So
that's where the detractors try to come in at.
Yeah.
Out of the bucket. They try to pull you back in, or they get enraged. Because once you start talking outside of the matrix and you start pointing out how the matrix is flawed, then the matrix starts glitching. It starts freaking out. It starts, oh my God, we got to pull Daryl back down. Oh, Daryl, shut up. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You start seeing cognitive dissonance, and people get very violent. They start getting angry. Shut up. I can't believe you said that. My grandma once said that, if you have one drop of, of peanut butter, you're peanut butter. And it's just like, shit just doesn't make sense.
Jiffy. You know what, man? That's deep, though, because I always look at it like this, man. Like, you just named it. Somebody tells you what you are. They give you a value, and it's like, you need to give yourself a value. Self-evaluation is what you need. Values aren't given by mankind. My value comes from a higher source. That's why my name wasn't created. I was born. I had to have a name to exist on this planet. So as well as a social security card, they got to track. It's like, that's the value. That's all neither here nor there. But I do believe, man, the way I view things from crabs from all sorts, like you said, some crabs are already out the bucket. Some crabs are in the bucket. I see that. I deal with that mixture. So I don't know where that puts me on the cusp of like mankind or what your expectations are, but it gives you at least a vantage point to kind of look back and know what to expect from both types of crafts.
I don't know. I think I just look at people and I feel like a lot of people, even if you see on TikTok and social media, some people just say some shit and it just sounds crazy. And when you and when you say something that's intelligent,
Yeah.
the crazy people will be the masses and they'll be the ones to tell you to shut up. And it's
Oh,
just like,
absolutely.
did you really question? Did you really think about what you're
Yeah,
saying?
they don't want to hear that, man.
No,
Like,
they're just going whatever someone else
we
says.
can drop a plethora of large ass verbiage and big words up
Dude.
here and speaking riddles and rhyme. I can rhyme right now and still make a statement. They don't want to hear it if they don't want to hear it. They want to. They'll pick a flaw out in it and say, you know, why'd you say that? Why'd you do that? Or you didn't pronounce this word correctly. And it's like, why don't you open your ears instead of soaking in your fears, man? What is it about what I say that makes you glitch? Because you could be here saying it too. You know, you could be in this position discussing things that make you feel a type of way, or you're just ignoring all of them because you're just not exploring all of them. So, you know, a lot of us have this expectation and destination, and there's nothing else that they want to add to the equation. And that's why
I think a lot of things too, though, is like this. I feel like, Daryl, that a lot of people that exist or who were created who were created out of the system of colonization of the Americas in general, that goes all the way down to Brazil, to Chile, all the way to Canada. There's a lot of confusion within those caste-like systems throughout that, and there's ignorance that permeates throughout it. And so everyone's really confused because you've got people who are extremists in certain views, like, there's one guy on TikTok, Dr. Umar. He always talks about these things, and I think some things he might say have some sense of truth, but some of them are just so overboard and they don't make sense and they're contradictive. Like, I think I was watching one thing where he was talking with Nick Cannon, and he was basically saying that Nick Cannon shouldn't date women that don't look like his bloodline or his mother, and etc. And which were African American, and by doing so, he was giving his finances out to other populations or groups.
I think I heard about that. I think I remember him tapping
whatever.
That.
And then he starts talking
money
about, but then he starts talking about, he mentioned something about Mariah Carey, and then how he used to have her poster on the wall, and how amazing it was for Nick Cannon to have her poster. I mean, to marry her and have kids. And I'm just kind of confused, scratching my brain, because I'm like, this guy's saying he's pro this and he's pro that, when he's talking about Mariah Carey and he's talking about the African diaspora. Mariah Carey doesn't represent the African diaspora.
No.
Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you don't typically see somebody from China claiming some, person who had a great grandparent that was Asian, but they walk around as Molly McGee. It's like, what Asian diaspora do they belong to necessarily? Like, it's insanity. And it's just like, it's just weird. It's weird.
It is, man. I truly, and I want to see if you, and I feel like you agree to a degree probably with me on this one, because like you take it to a very deep place where I do too, but you go even deeper. Like, when you really bring up the colonizing element to it, like, because it's good to look at it from a, like you said, non-subjective standpoint, objectively, like to sit back and really look at the circus and say, this is crazy. And it's while you're looking at it, somebody just hands you some popcorn and peanuts, like, hey, just stop thinking. The caterpillars are coming out next, and they dance and stuff. It's like, they'll stop you. Like you said, the detractors, man, like, they really will stop you the moment you stop and look around and say, do you believe in what you do? Do you believe in yourself? Do you believe in what that person just said? Do you believe in this guy that's running for, like, do you believe in any of this? Like, there's no way I can respect you as an intellectual and know that you fall for this circus. And when I say circus, that there's a lot of areas with that, but I do agree that when you were talking about diasporas and stuff, and I was like, okay, so do you think that, because you're thinking worldly, I'm thinking right now just culturally, as far as like the United States of America, which we have a very large part of the stage. Like, we're always an opening act. I mean, the closing act, you catch my drift. So when I bring up our act, it's valid because we and I'm saying this respectfully, we influence a lot of other things. Like, you got other Europe and Japan, they influence other cultures, and design and fashion and things like I mean, you know, it's a lot of experience influence coming out this melting pot. And that's fair. We got a melting pot. We got to admit that. Some immigrants came on their own, some didn't. With that being said, do you think that there's some truth to the fact that some crabs are more vicious than others, or they got more going on than other crabs? So like, they aren't getting the message. Like you said, by the time the first house passes it down to the last house, that last house is probably getting a whole straight up lie. Like, it could be a whole different message than what the messenger sent. So now you got a house full of chaos and confusion, and you can't get to the first house to ask them if this was what this is what you heard. So like, you know your place in the line of the houses. You already bought the house. You stuck there. So now you got to figure out how to find your own message. And nobody's going to tell you if you're right or wrong. They'll tell you if you're wrong, if you're right. And they'll tell you if you're right, if you're wrong. now we're, yeah, you feel me? That's where a lot of humans are right now, bro. I hate to say it. I hope y'all caught that when I said that.
Oh yeah, and I agree with you on those.
You're in a place of imagination of your own racing. Like, you don't know.
I think the thing is like, you know, I think people always say, well, you know, there's so many distractions, there's so many things going on, so I can't go and listen to whatever's happening in the room. Somebody's got to make a fucking conscious decision.
Yeah. That's the round table, man.
Do this. Someone's got to start a movement.
I agree.
To say, I'm going to learn this. Because at a certain point, you can't keep blaming people for shit without taking some
there
type
you
of
go.
accountability.
There you go, man. That's deep. Tell you, that's what me and my the close dogs, man. That word, I'm telling you, every time we go in and we go down that rabbit hole, that word comes up, man. At the end of it, accountability, and that's where you start at. That's where the start is. That's why I told you, you have to get that person to sit down and stop glitching and face the music, and then they can feel accountable.
Right. And also accountability can be it can be some type of variation. And for me, for example, like, watch, there are some things that I know not to be true, and I do not believe them, and I don't follow them. Mm-hmm. And I know certain people do, or the masses do, and I mock them. And since I don't care about them, I know it's a joke. So I bullshit with them. Yeah. And I think that those things are silly for kids. So I don't even entertain, you know, having accountability on those perspectives, because I don't believe in them and I know it's not true. And I know that a bunch of people might do this. So I just laugh and I will make a joke out of it, or I mock it, because I know, like, this is ridiculous. But people who might believe these things and take these things as truths, I know that they live by these fucking things. Right. Yeah. And so for me, I'm not going to take accountability in something that I do not believe and something I know that is not true. And that's literally written.
There's difference.
Made up.
There's
literally fucking written that it's made up.
Yeah.
Why am I going to take accountability for some shit that's made up? You know, Santa Claus.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I see the variation. Santa Claus was
probably not some. He wasn't a dude in England or something like that.
He wasn't no pagan.
Reindeers. You know, Santa Claus or Saint Nicholas was some dude who was living in Turkey, giving out some stuff. He wasn't even. And now we consider Turkey in a Muslim country because it's been taken over.
Oh, a lot of things came out of. Yeah. Now you dropping some bombs. Now we dropping bombs. I see.
I'm just saying.
That was straight off the top of the chimney, man.
Oh ho ho.
Yeah. Ho, ho.
No point intended.
Oh man, yeah, no pun intended, man.
You get my point. It's just like,
that's. But
you
can take that point to enlighten them, man. Maybe they don't glitch. Maybe they didn't know. You know, clearly they're not running the show. Nobody, you don't know you're NPC until somebody tell you. Like,
but you have to take accountability when you don't. And I've literally argued and had stupid conversations with people over the internet, and I've realized a lot of people don't take accountability. And you always have these, hood educations sometimes, or
survival,
or trailer park educations, or whatever you want to call it, or hut. Educations, and they try to just
Pizza Hut was good in the 90s, man.
Or small village, education. They try to come at you with something else. Like, for example,
you mean example?
Who? Yeah. Well, for example, I was speaking to one guy one time on social media, and I think it was on a Nick Cannon clip or something like that. And I think he was talking about soil, or soil degradation of plants and vitamins and stuff like that of natural things. And I was basically saying, well, American soil is usually typically not as, the reason why the fruit aren't as healthy, because I think he made some statement of like, oh, well, we should eat fruit and we should eat natural things. I'm like, well, it depends on where you're eating them at, because you're not going to get the proper vitamins. So you have to take supplements typically if you're in the United States, because there's issues with the soil. There's chemicals in the soil that we use that other countries don't use.
Yeah.
We also degrade the actual soil after harvesting them numerous of times, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, no, that's not true. I said, well,
Immediately said that's not true.
yeah, he just said it was not true. And I was like, well, I
That's-
said, do you have any background on this? Did you do any research? Like, how
Yeah.
do you conduct a proper study of this if you've done so? And he was like, well, I worked on a farm actually, thank you very much. And when I worked on that farm, we did some tests. I said, well, what kind of tests did you do? You didn't give me any contact. You just said you worked on a farm and you did some tests. What does that even mean? I said, I can tell by the people you typically reply to based off of your reply.
They stop it right there when he just says, I did some tests.
Oh, well, no, he kind of went off on something else. And it was just like, to me, I just was laughing. I was like, I could tell the type of people you engage with. And, typically, because you would come back with this type of reply. Anyone who's educated enough to understand who they're talking to, they're never going to reply something that silly to me, because they're going to know who they're talking to. And they're going to do the research.
He was
before they reply.
disrespecting. He might have been disrespecting is what it was. He was projecting.
I don't know if he was. I don't think he was just necessarily disrespecting. I think he just thought, or he was used to just dumb people.
No,
he was the smartest guy in the room, and he could just say anything to people. He just
yeah.
thinks he's talking to regular people on the internet and at the same level as him. And it's like, I'm not being rude or mean, but like, we're not on the same level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, as far as
you gotta call it how it is, man.
Work
For
experience.
him to say you're wrong, that let me know what level he's on. I would never tell a human being you're wrong, like immediately. Even if let me explain. Immediately, clearly in his mind, unless they're wrong, you can say it in a way that you could jazz it up and make him not feel bad. But he said it to you not knowing that if he was right. He just thought he was right. So that's what I meant. Like, I'm not in a position intellectually to put myself on the line to tell somebody you're wrong out of emotion and feeling immediately, unless I knew, like, unless it's a cut and dry situation. Like, your name's spelled like this, and I say you're wrong. I know that. Like, there's those, and then there's other elements. That's as close as you can get to like you're wrong on a level of like jokingly, but like then you get to the higher levels of like now you're speaking on things you don't know about, like you spoke on Santa Claus, mentioning like somebody's like, no, St. Nicholas is from the North Pole or he's from Wales or Scotland. Like, they give me all, and you tell them like you're wrong. You might let him down easy or not, but this guy coming in hot saying you're wrong about something that he just thought he knew more than the average person of because he farms. Those people are the masses, brother.
Yeah. And at the same time, I think it's just like I said at the beginning, it shows me the type of quality of the people he's typically speaking to or applying to.
Agreed.
His level, he wasn't even, he's not even used to speaking to anybody who has proper experience to critique him properly.
Yeah.
And I could read based off of what he said to me that he really didn't understand what he was even talking about, because he didn't even question. He didn't even mention, oh, I worked on a farm. Okay. Well, that's not even a way you actually will do proper research. You would actually you would say, hey, look, okay, I worked on 50 farms in the United States, and I compared it with data of all those 50, farms in the United States.
Yeah.
And I looked at the data from there, and within that data, there was blood work that was done from these certain individuals, and we had a baseline where they never, what their blood work was, and then we isolated that blood work, and then we isolated them. Then we gave them like fruits and vegetables from these 50 different places where these farms were, and then we saw this increase based off of the fruits that they ate in a controlled situation.
Situation.
I understand that you know how.
He'd be a scientist then, not a farmer. But you're right though. Like, he definitely was going to end it at that. He was like, "I farm now, start it." But no, you're right though. He did. He's like, he did. Like, you're right. you killed him. I mean, I don't know where he was. This online, like in the chat or like comment section?
It's just like in a comment thing about some silly thing about Whitney Cannon or some guy who was a nutritionist and was talking, and some people were just rebuttaling, and he just rebutted something. Sometimes when I see people say some silly shit, it calls me to say, like, are you serious?
I wish I was like that, man. I have some things I could say too, but I
don't do it to attack somebody or to put somebody down in any way. I just do it to just give information. And it's a non-biased information. It's not my opinion. I'm like, dude, if you literally took 5 seconds, you can Google it yourself and say, does the American soil cause vitamin deficiency or some type of degrading of vitamins to humans and or people in America? And then you can look at that study, and then you can dig in to see how the study was conducted. And if you understand how studies need to be conducted, you know that you need certain, values, keywords, or certain things that need to be done in order to conduct a proper study.
A proper,
or you can debunk
controlled environment,
Right. But if you don't even understand the premises of research and the output of it, how the hell can you just sit there and tell me you read something on the statistics and the data? That's why I don't like when people say, well, the data says 13% of these people create all the crime, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, dude, did you really look at all the data? And how was that, how was it conducted?
How was this census conducted? Did you go to every home?
Right. Even when you start looking at, DNA, results, it's like, if you, I'm 50%, I'm 30%. I'm like, dude, do you understand that you got to look at the demographics of the study of where they got the samples from? So for example, if the sample size was only 500 people, and now they're telling everybody who matches these 500 people that they're this or they're that, that's not enough to say that this person's that. And how do you know that person was originally that person? Because you live in a place that is so intermixed that the DNA is going to read up wrong.
I know it. I know you talking about Ancestry, probably.
Ancestry.
Yeah, man.
I caught
on quick. I was like, this doesn't, I was like, I don't trust you. Like, it was something in my soul that was like, I just don't trust you. I could be a Aboriginal alien for all I know. But at the end of the day, it's like, you're going to throw me into that value. It's like any DNA that comes through this pipeline, put them in this area. I know where your address was on the kit we sent you. I'm going to throw that in the mix too. Like, you're probably, man, I'm too intelligent for that. Not self-proclaiming wise, but I like to think my brain is operating. So I saw that too.
Brains are not like that in a way. They don't actually look any further. They'll just look at what the output of the data is and say, oh, well, this says this. And they'll go on the Instagram or TikTok. My DNA test says this right here, and such said a study was done that the average person is this. I'm like, bro, did you read the fucking study? Did you read the research? You know how the research is needed to be conducted properly.
It was an article about an article on the study about a study. They didn't look at look at the references in the bibliography.
Right.
They don't look at that. They're gonna be like, how many people revised over this before it got to this article? A lot.
Right.
Yeah, you got to go to the source.
Let's say, for example, Indigenous ancestry. Native American ancestry. There's different Native American tribes. So, the DNA is going to show up differently. But if you don't have a proper sample, pure amount of DNA,
thank you. Yeah.
How are you going to reference who is Indigenous and who is not?
I actually had that talk with my supervisor, man, and once, like, it basically was like, you don't know, like, especially even in the South where everybody was spread out, and it was like, you aren't getting it from the original source. And it's like, there's so many elements to location. And I know it's flawed. I think it's more so like, I feel like they have a disclaimer at the bottom that says this is meant for entertainment purposes only. Like, it might be.
Well, it does say it's a speculation, but most people do not go off of that, and they don't read that at all. They might read one little, link and say, okay, well, it says this and they got the study from here, but they don't read, they don't understand how the data works.
Yeah.
Like, you got to read, like, it says this was conducted by 200 people in Missouri. Okay. Now, 200 people in Missouri, what tribe were they in? And what's the average makeup of that tribe? And also you have to understand that American indigenous tribes, they banned, taking DNA tests. Almost like how basically what you hear about Israel bans the DNA test in Israel. So how do you really know? And not to talk about that, I'm going to go off on that subject. That's a whole other thing. But
I saw you saw me do like this. I was like, don't do that, man.
So how do you even know?
That's dark.
For example, who is, how do you know the sample that you have is a pure sample? And the problem is they don't. And they know that it's not. They know that most of the people now have been intermixed
Yeah,
with some type
beyond,
of
man.
mixture. So you can't say this person is 100% this and use that for the sample size to compare it with, because
Nah.
those people are all mixed themselves. They haven't been isolated since they haven't been set in a small, remote, isolated town or area.
One of those islands, the Monkey Island or whatever that.
Right. They haven't been isolated. So therefore your DNA test is going to be wrong. So when people are getting, in South America or in Central America, oh, my DNA test says, 60% indigenous and 40%, European and like 10%, African, sub-Saharan African, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, bro, or North African. I'm just like, dude, you need more context than that. That doesn't make any fucking sense at certain points. It's just like, you got to go by, what do you kind of look like too? And then like, also, where's this, were these sample sizes actually, I guess quality sample size?
Yeah, quality.
Were these indigenous people isolated and never had contact with any other outside people? The chances of that happening is very rare. You have some small little tribal groups like in Brazil, Amazon, that have been, not actually interacting with people.
Yeah,
but that doesn't you can't use that sample amount for someone that's sitting in.
I would like to see that.
South Carolina.
No, you cannot. Welcome to the hub, Grub Hub. They've been Grub Hubbing out here, man. But I would like to see one of those indigenous tribes, like the non-contact. I forgot their name. There's a few probably, but I would like to see a swab, Charles Schwab of that, like just straight up and like be around the data. Like you're gonna get a couple thousand years of some data probably.
Right, but you can't. But even that though. Let's say you take it out of some, remote indigenous tribe in, let's say, Amazon, for example. Mm-hmm. That's probably the most place where you're going to find still some indigenous people that have never been interacting with any other people. Out of 500 fucking years, right? Say you get that. That's fine. But that same DNA can't be used to decipher if someone who is indigenous person from the America of the United States is indigenous, because tribes carry their own distinct markers.
That's true. I see what you're saying. Yeah, because like indigenous to that location, but
like a Nigerian doesn't have the same DNA as every single nationality or tribe within the African continent. Because people like to say that Africa is a they like to talk about Africa almost as if it's like a nation when it's actually just a continent.
Yeah,
with millions of tribes within it have total different DNA.
Yeah, yeah, enlightenment.
It's just real.
It is
just
real.
Like,
yeah, no, you're right though, man. It's cool shit. Honestly, I as soon as you started talking about that, I was like, he's talking about like ancestry, because I think we even briefly mentioned it, but it was true, man. Like, because I had a little one on the way, so for me, I was kind of like just wanting to get a pinpoint area, but I still knew it was going to be some ancestry. You know what it is. It is what it is, but. I just knew it was no way in hell that it was going to be an accurate reading. Like, I felt like it was some parameters set and some if-thens that were like if-then and locations, man. Like, give me a blind swab from, don't know my location, don't know this, don't let me feel like this is like a genuine situation and not like one of those for entertainment purposes only, because a lot of people are taking it and running with it. A lot of people are confused. A lot of people are just not asking questions, and a lot of people aren't looking at the data or how you're acquiring said data. So, I don't know, man. Maybe I think it's all kind of like still a gatekeeping situation. I have my own thoughts about DNA testing and things they can do and things they can't do, and how that kind of is categorized. But
I would say this right here. Watch this. You have to look at, when you start looking at, for example, certain, results, you have to understand there's a political, governmental perspective behind everything. So, for example, if you are an indigenous or have indigenous ancestry, does the government really want everyone to start, or who has this indigenous ancestry, to actually start registering that or knowing that? Because if they do, there's laws that pertain to payment to certain indigenous people. And so therefore you might have to start paying people. Now, of course, the government says, well, you have to be a part of a recognized tribe. You just can't say you have blood or a DNA test from, blah, blah. You have to be a part of a recognized tribe. So the government even defines who is indigenous in the United States.
There you go. Everything is defined, man. That's why it's like the laws are, man.
Well,
At this point, you know.
Here's
All
my
right.
point though. Here's my point. 1 second
Yeah.
before you even mention that point. I'm just want to make one point and add it onto here. Now that you're thinking about that it's the government that tells someone who is indigenous and not and defines what that is. Now, once you understand that, you understand also, or you might want to understand that they would do other things to stop a lot of people from going against that method. So if a lot of people knew they were indigenous, right, they would say, well, hey, we want to change those laws that the government defines who's indigenous because I've got all this blood and it's indigenous. And you know what? I want to change the way that is. So people who are not the way the government, categorizes who's indigenous and says that they can tell you who's indigenous. I want to change that. And now we're going to change the law. And now guess what we're going to have to do?
Pay these people.
Exactly. So therefore, I'm going to push and promote that, you know what?
23 million.
I do not want to give the exact results of anybody who's technically indigenous. And then you have to also go back into indigenous.
Give them 1%.
Well, even think of this. Then you also have to go back into indigenous things like this. There are people who are who had indigenous ancestry, but they were reclassified and one dropped into another category. And if you one drop somebody, but then let's say you don't one drop another culture, for example, you're European and you're mixed with indigenous, but you don't one drop them and you blood quantum them, that makes it easier for somebody with a European background to claim that ancestry and get money. But if you have one drop of this other one, you can't claim any are indigenous.
Yeah, and that's what you said. Let's look into the legislation and the rules then of that aspect and say, when did they come into play? Who is this guy to talk about people that he isn't and to put tariffs or whatever, types of you're putting canopies on top of people who aren't even existing yet, in a sense, and saying we're going to keep this pipeline not rolling. Actually, we're going to cut it off now, because if they found out the truth, or if they heard this and figured out where they originated, even if y'all look alike, you could be in the indigenous and don't, it's like phenotypes, like, I know you're kind of hinting with that too, but I do agree, man. Everybody who has some sort of indigenous element, at least in the Americana stance, I think they got taken care of to that degree.
Well, here's the thing. If you are indigenous outside of the United States, there's not much benefits for it. Except for maybe like in Canada, there's some small ones, but it's not really that good, obviously, as you would understand.
That's
right?
why
everybody likes to care about indigenous people when there's not many around, right? To support a system. Right, because you majority blended out most indigenous people.
Yeah,
and you don't have to engage with indigenous people on the on a daily basis. So it's easy to say, I support indigenous people
over there.
If we're gonna give back rights, we need to we're gonna give back reparations and all those type of things. We need to give it to indigenous people. Well, that's easy to fucking say when there's barely anybody indigenous.
Yeah, they were waiting. They got to get the numbers down first.
Once you blend it out,
we can pay y'all now.
Of course, you want to talk about.
I can afford this now. Oh man, that's dark, man.
Right?
It's so true. It's so true.
That's why I laugh at the point, Daryl, of like people like Dr. Umar going on these racial rants, and he starts talking about one dropping. I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? You're gonna one drop yourself out of existence.
Damn, at
Because
least
if
he
you
had a
keep
game
on
plan.
one dropping anybody into your group or your classification, what value does your classification or group have anymore? It's fluid.
It's fluid. It should be the value of man. The
Wow,
value
everyone
of your
else
soul,
is
man.
not fluid.
Oof.
I'm just saying. Think about this. There's no fluidity in being Asian. There's no fluid of being Asian. You got to be Asian.
Yeah.
You got to look mostly all Asian for Asian people to claim you as Asian. If you don't look Asian to them, you're not Asian.
Well, yeah, that like you said, the one drop, man, like the whole pot. The whole pot is affected, man. Which is like, maybe in another time, millions of years ago, it was a positive thing. Who knows? But
I don't think it was. And and I think the thing is like it's an American thing.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
It's an American idealism and
Ideology.
oppression belief to push and permeate inside of communities to stop them from progressing and keep them at their bottom. But at the same time, what it's indirectly going to do is it's going to cause them to not notice that they're just blended out until they don't exist.
Oof.
Because the moment you keep on calling anybody one drop of something, eventually that whole group either is going to be majority locked up in prison, or they're going to be killed off by diseases, that were put in within the community or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And then they're going to either blend out like football players, children, and eventually they're just going to be, not looking like what they phenotypically subscribe to.
I think they had a lot of articles and stuff like the human of 2050 or 2090 or 3000. And yeah, it looked like what you would expect. Like,
but I'm just saying, like, how long can you hang on to that shit and make that the ignorance?
People wouldn't hang on to it if everybody was eating at a fair pace and table. I think a lot of things will be let go, like some Fifth Element shit. Like you got aliens and robots here too now. So look how stupid y'all look. It
wasn't even relevant though. It was just something made up.
Yeah, exactly. But how long can the joke keep going? I mean, it's working. It's still rolling. I don't know if it'll be in our lifetime when we see some real strong effects of the joke wearing off in that sense. But I think generationally, another 100-something maybe years, maybe you'll start seeing robots have these issues, or aliens, or animals that's hybrid humans. I don't know, but I feel like there's always like a reset and a new punching bag or a new. It's all money related. You got to keep people feeling like they got something that keeps them motivated. Like, I'm supposed to be better than you because, or whatever they got going on. But in reality, it's like, man, like, taking even out the religion out of it. It's like, do you really feel like this is all of that you're defined or like some God given? Like, it's like, I think everybody knows it's like a whisper. But
I don't know. I feel like it's certain people, they just make up fake causes and they want to attach themselves to causes that
they want to feel important.
Yeah, they want to feel important. They want to be a martyr. So they want to stick to things that, they don't really resonate with our day and time, but they want to stick to it. And they see a little bit of it still around. So they want to push onto that thing. They want to be remembered. And so they want to just start saying some silly shit just to say shit. And, they'll be like,
sticks.
For example, there might be a person like a Dr. Umar. He might be like, what? He loves his, beautiful, melanated people. And then, he gets a person who's, typically not melanated, but says, you know what, her grandma was. So I'm not really, I'm still sticking with the melanhood. I'm sticking with the melanin, even though it's phenotypically not melanin. But I'm still sticking true to my cause.
See, yeah, now you're getting now there's always like but wait, it's not like that. Like, like, look at the papers. See, it's like now we're just looking like goofballs. Like, it's like, hey, brother, be happy. Be happy.
Yeah. I mean, is it even be happy, or just at the point where it's just like, you're trying to look for, if you're thinking of, if I'm saying, for example, if I'm saying, oh, I really would like to date an Asian girl, but then, I'm looking at this blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl who had a grandma who was Asian. But I'm saying that counts. How does that count?
I think unless the phenotypes are that strong, unless you want this for how it looks, and it's like you said, Mariah. I'm just
saying, a lot of people do this. Mariah Carey, for example, Mariah Carey. Those people who want to be pro something, they always do this. Even when you look at Kendrick Lamar, and I think Drake said something about his girl based off of that. Like, how are you trying to play like you're all this and you're like the Messiah, but then your girl is not even like that?
I've had moments like this on a regular human level with people that did things, said things, and I was kind of like, hey, man, I was told something that was like, man, you don't know my parents, you don't know me. Like, you coming at this, I'm blacker. And I was like, but by definition of what the terminology is, I'm blacker than you, and your skin tone doesn't dictate that, brother. So I've had to do things and talk to people before and say such and such and such, and then they get quiet. It's like, yeah, like, what you think this phenotype is Murder, She Wrote, or is this all that she writes? No, it's not. You just chose a path that you could only choose because that's all you got. I didn't have that as the only option. So I can enlighten you. Maybe you can enlighten me on why you feel this way and you're so pressed about it. But be happy. Like you said, it's like the pot calling the kettle black. That these old sayings, they stick around for a long time for a reason.
People don't, for some reason, for some are bad reasons, because some people don't think about it. I think that's my whole point.
They
in the
don't want
beginning
to
of this
think.
2-hour conversation. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, we
do
was
people
getting it,
even think
man.
about what they're saying, and does it make any sense, or they just spit it out? And it just sounds like,
Yeah,
did you even fucking
regurgitate.
think what you just said?
I think we're getting a lot of them are programmed, like you said, man. Going back to the topic at the beginning of all this, man, when we got into it, like that slow motion, that programming, that psyche being warped when they didn't even know it was being there. And that goes back to like we were talking about, having that podcast element of people wanting to talk about content, not being told what to listen to. Your radio, your news channels, your food, your voting options, your choice of schools. Like you're set your position in a life where you have so many tests and limited options, so it's like they don't even know they're being programmed until they talk to a non-programmed individual, and now they start to glitch. It's like you tell an NPC, hey, you do know this is a video game, right? And you show them like, see, I can do this, but you can't. And I think, I feel like that was in the movie too, probably Fall Guy, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, but but we've thought it before. But yeah, it's like, hey, I'm not, I'm not here to talk about NPCs and what's not, but I am here to say that you're not going to convince me that I'm one of them. It's like, if anything, there's levels of the program and the algorithm, but there's also, back to the bucket. There's crabs that want to stay in it. There's crabs that want you in it. There's crabs that want out. There's crabs that never had to be in it. And it's just unfortunate that you might not have a position in where your crab was created at. You might start it off and there's already crabs crawling on top of you, and you're like, you're sentient enough to know you ain't supposed to be in this bucket, but now you got to get out of this crab mentality and hope there's not somebody walking with the bucket that's about to take you to the dinner table. You know what I'm saying? Like, back to that, you can either be a crab as a pet or a crab on the plate.
Yeah. Crab on the plate.
Crab on the plate, man.
Yeah, for sure. No, I get it, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some. Let's go into some other stuff about. Let's do Trump. Yeah, I like Trump. Let's do it.
Hey, man, it's what's the talking topic, man? It's a lot of things on that,
What do you think about Trump? What do you think about the whole Trump? What do you think about him being, prosecuted or whatever for like 34 some odd crimes or et cetera?
I just saw today because personally, me, I'm not really a big news person. I catch it through friends or through when it needs to be caught. I keep up with the things that really, like, oh, meteors coming to Earth. I don't know about it. But for the most part, man, I was I guess surprised at the way they were speaking on it and saying that the way the courtroom was, that they didn't seem like there was no shadow of doubt that he was going to get convicted, or that the judge would come to a conclusion today, or the jury, whatever. And then they said he had a whisper, and then they deliberated, and then they changed their mind, and then they came out and then hit him with it. So, I mean, that's a little shocking because I didn't see any of that happening. As far as the allegations and everything that he's got, charged with, if you did it, you did it, man. As far as the timing and everything else going on, I'm sure there's both sides doing and pulling all the strings they can to do things. But I mean, I just don't want this to be. I want people to still stay in reality and say, hey, we're pretty fair with, if you are convicted, you're convicted. I see American people do things and they'll say, if you're convicted, you're guilty. The judge did their thing. The America wins again. So it's like, when you pick and choose things out the Bible, and now you're picking and choosing things out of the court system, you just picking and choosing. You just don't want to be losing, and that's fine. You got to come to accountability, like you say, and say, hey, I'm not God. I'm not right. I'm not in a position to say my stance on things, or my projection of my mentality and my thought means it's the only one that exists on this planet. And that's why you start bending truths, and that's when demonic shit happens and shit falls. That's when empires fall, when you start having people just stop. They start doing whatever they want to do. And I see some things unfolding, man, in the near future. I think that's going to have you at a point where people are going to just straight up look at you and say, I know he was guilty, and I still don't give a F. And when you get people that come in that, it's like, oh, at least I respect the honesty. But if they mean, well, what do you mean after that? What's the end game after that? So now you're basically admitting that what's right is right if I say it's right. or if I want it to be right. So if we're at that point, then it's like, okay, well, here we are. So I don't really have much to say outside of, you know, if it was a jury of peers of New Yorkers, and and they deliberated, and it was unanimous. Like, I don't know what else to say on that topic. If you do something, you do something. Now looking in the camera and saying I didn't do it, you're an adult. Tell the truth, because if you're not, I don't want to hear it.
Here's what I think. Here's what I think right here, right? And you touched a lot of points that I want to talk about really fast too as well. One, you mentioned about, some people, and I think what you're touching on is there was times, where there were certain people or certain beliefs or demographics who basically said, there's this guy, Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman, he gets off. The court's not, the court says he was innocent, so he should be chosen innocent. So then there's this moral thing versus this legal thing where people have this, political argument with. And then there's just things like, George Floyd. And then there's just things like, about, Rodney King, OJ Simpson, these type of political things that they add racial hierarchies or categories into it to make it, really divisive.
Yep.
And it's like, there was a lot of people who were, arguing at those times. Well, if the court says this, then the court is right. And now probably there's a lot of people who were saying those same things. And now when it comes to Trump, it's changing. That voice is changing. It's like, oh no, well, the court's wrong. Well, it's like, well, when other people were saying the courts are wrong about, people like, Trayvon Martin and these other people, it was like a whole different story. It was like, no. What are you talking about? The court says right. You need to go by the law.
Justice wins again.
The cops for the law.
You obey the law, Judge Dredd. People go Judge Dredd out here quick, don't they? Like, I'm above the law. That's what they really going to end up saying. I'm above the law is what they're going to start screaming. Because Judge Dredd was post-apocalyptic.
Right, but I think what I'm saying is, like, I understand kind of where you're kind of, going with that in a way.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
A lot of people were hypocrites.
Yeah, hypocrites.
Because they weren't saying the same things when it was somebody who was a different you.
Yeah. And I hate that it has to be that way, man. Like, I look at people, I judge people by their souls, man. You can't control what vessel you popped into. But I will say, like, you're not going to lie to a positive vessel, and you're not going to point at something and tell me it's this when it's not. So it's like, I remember, and Peppered Farm remembers, because the internet is forever, unfortunately. So, like, I mean, you got people on both sides doing both things, man. You got people who are, I'm not a celebratory type of person, like, unless it's a really demonic person that gets what, to that degree. For me, it's more so I want justice and truth. You stand by it, you mean it. And there's travesties that happen all the time. So when you can see that race baiting element that starts to unfold behind the scenes, and that propaganda is starting to stew up confusion and delusion again. And it also it projects inclusion and saying, it's us. You start hearing the word we. You start hearing we and us and all that and they. You start hearing all these new terms. I'm like, sir, I pay my taxes as well. I was born in America on this. So what is this they and we and us? It's like, in God we trust. Who am I part of that we, or who is we? Let's define that. We're doing all these pronouns now and stuff, not in a disrespectful way, but it's like, let's use the basic terminology of a plural. Like, who is we? Define this we for me. Is it we the people? Who are the people? The people didn't used to be defined as one person back then. Who are all the people you were saying when you say these things? So it comes down to, I think people are going to stop having the explanation of why they saying stuff and why they defend this stuff. And they're just going to flat out say, what we mean when I say we.
Yeah, I agree. And
I'd rather that just be like, hey, keep it 100, man. So I know where it's at, but God don't like ugly. If you believe in that,
you're not going to get all that, but because then that gives power away.
Yes, so it gives the power away.
What I'm going to say in general is, like, I believe obviously, Trump did do a lot of those things that he did, but I don't think that, I think some people are saying, and this is where I think some things that some of the people are saying I do resonate with, where I believe that, you can kind of see it when you've been around things, you've seen some things that there's so many people have done bad things in the political space. Why is his magnified and turned to a crime when all these other people have done it? And if, for example, we do know Biden and his son doing a bunch of heinous crimes, and he's gotten away with it. So how are we going to say Trump is the criminal when Biden's done so many criminal acts? I mean, we're sending money to bomb people.
There's somebody else pulling the strings, man. There's somebody else pulling the strings. You get one this year, you get this 4 years, you get this side of the Geppetto. This 4 years, you get this side of the Geppetto, and it recycles and recycles with this party, this party, this party. It's ping pong, man. And it's distraction, man. It's like nobody's sitting outside and looking in the sky and saying, "Why am I here?" Yeah, if they are, they might not like the answer to that, but. I don't watch the news, man. It was only on in the rarity of me looking for some outside thoughts. I wanted to feel what the masses see every day, and I felt it. The whole house was absorbed. Like the moment it's on in the background, that white noise is just like, this is what I am now. This is all I focus on today. Like, is this situation, and it's like, am I really affected by it when I turn this TV off? Like, none of that did anything for me outside of distract me. And fearmonger and this and that and warmonger, this and that. They're coming. The redcoats are coming. So it's like, when you know better, you do better sometimes. So I just choose to look for things that I am going to really engage in. It's not just humanistic. Politics is one thing that you tap into if you feel you need to. But if you only are in it, there's so many other aspects of life. Being absorbed by humans or martyrs or king on the hill, king of the hills, people that feel inclined deities, fake false prophets, kings, all this other jizz and jazz, man. They're humans.
So yeah, with that being said, Daryl,
that was deep.
Do you think, for sure it was, do you think that Donald Trump's going to win, or do you think he will be locked up and arrested?
Off the head, man, I will say I don't think he would win. I think that or get arrested. I think that it would just be a lot of it's going to be messy. It's going to be really messy. If I had to say anything, because judging by law and how things aren't supposed to go, convicted felons are, that would be unconstitutional, or however they want to project it as far as on paper. But I will say it might get spicy. I mean, Hollywood's getting destroyed in its own way, but it won't go all the way down. Politics, people might get destroyed in their own way, but it won't go all the way down. Like, it's still like sacrificial elements, I feel like, on a bigger stage that we don't get tickets to.
But who do you think will win?
I think that in the right parameters, given that if he is allowed in that sense, and the party getting to turn up, I think that Trump does have a chance to win. But I don't see it. So, I mean, I can't take a guess into something that's chaotic, because I'm looking right now and I'm seeing it just start to steam up. But it will be interesting to see. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he actually has a great chance of winning, provided the points, because it's like, who's going to vote for Biden?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's kind of the situation, man.
Like, who else is there? Just DeSantis or whatever it may be. Welcome to Earth. Come on in. I mean, I'm just saying, why would you vote for Biden? He's just like, he's not even president anymore.
If anything, I could see people not voting this year. I can see people vote. I could see people voting more on the Trump level because of what we already experienced and with the Biden aspect. But I can also see it being, if he gets stopped. So that's what I mean. Like, if he isn't allowed to actually become president, because of that situation. So it's like, that's why I'm kind of in that middle ground of like,
okay,
it's fair, like, it's kind of like it's a toss up, because it can go so many ways.
Right. But I'm saying, providing the points that, I mean, I think that's the thing too, is like, I think people see a lot of discrimination when they start looking at Trump's situation, because it's just like, it brings back memories of discrimination, because it's like, he's about to run for president. Now he's getting these charges. And it's like, I think a lot of people with some melanin, understand what that means.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think he resonates with a lot of people on that. And there's people, I don't think it's the same. I was like, well, no, I definitely do see that as the same.
I think it's mainly like, the people that get like the wrong people,
underdogs,
the underdogs and then the other people that just are just dogs, like the ones that get the wrong impression of what certain things stand for, and they take it and run with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that causes like unrest, civil unrest, weirdness, suspect activity in the nation. You know, like you just want the person that's representing you. You want them to know, like, hey, the people I rep, like, you don't want the people that you represent to be some suspects. Is all I'm saying. Like, you don't want the wrong the certain tiers of people running, like, vote for you for the wrong reasons. And meanwhile, you're just on some like, hey, I can't control this little one category group or this subcategory. That, but in reality, it's like, but you're responsible for your message. That you're responsible for that. You know they exist. You know why they exist. What you gonna do about it?
Right.
If you're not gonna directly acknowledge them, then you're allowing them to operate. You're just being like, be smart. Like, that's really what it is. Like, what? Otherwise, it's like you're a president of the United States of America. We've seen how many things have happened with the previous ones. The one, you know, current. It's like, man, this is all talk. I'm seeing a lot of talk, man. I'm not seeing you pulling. I'm not seeing any monumental things happening outside of what ifs. Oh, we'll get them next time. 4 years is a long time. You know, student loans are still loaning. So, like, it's like, I don't want to hear this. We'll get them next time, Tiger. Like, all right, man. Like, you know, just clock out.
All right. So we've nailed that down.
Yeah.
So I think one last topic before we get out of here.
Yeah.
Diddy, the entertainment industry.
Who that? Oh man. Did he do it? I heard that was supposed to be the book or like the show that 50 was gonna put out. Did he do it? I'll say this, man. Caveating off of the Trump thing, man. If you were convicted and you had great lawyers, something tells me you did that shit. So, you know, a great lawyer, it ain't like, you know, you're out lawyering, but I just feel like there's great evidence. So, I don't know, man. I feel like right now there's a war going on right now outside. No man is safe from. And I believe that it has a lot to do with things happening and things not happening. 1 second. So. Yeah, sorry about that. So I do think there's a war going on outside, in the event that it was a ticking time bomb that I think a lot of insiders knew was going on in the industry. And I think Kat speaking in that interview, I think some people were getting told that there might be some things coming down the pipeline, and they might have feared for their life because they knew that they might be questioned or they might be in a position that they aren't in a higher enough position to protect themselves when it comes down the pipeline. But I like that Kat and a few other people came out ahead of time knowing that that pipeline was starting, and they decided to do something about it. They leveraged it. And that's genius because every dog has its day. The Cat, I know that mentality when you know it's going to happen one day, but you're like, they're calling me crazy now. Give it 2 years, give it 3. You know, it's like, you know, it's inevitable for that house to fall. Like, you can't move like that for that long and not have a house fall. There's cases, we got technology, DNA now, like there's too many things going on for you to, every seat at the table you can be ejected from, especially melanin. So you got divisions and things like that, but in the grand scheme of the industry and what Hollywood stands for and where it was started and originated, you have a pass. It's like you have a 3-day pass to a festival. It's impermanent. So once that pass expired, like you said, the security guards started talking like, yeah, by the way, I saw it, like he ain't supposed to be performing, like his camp brought in the legal drug. People start talking. Once they see that you're expiring, everybody starts getting inspired, if that makes sense. So I do think Diddy is in a position now where, man, I thought when I saw that apology video, I was like, I saw the look on his face, man. You saw it?
Yeah. Who did?
Yeah, exactly. Who didn't? So I was like, man, I saw the look. You know that look, man. There's something about people's eyes that when it's like that, the optimism is gone. Like, it ain't no like, I'm a swag out of this shit. Like, when you know that final, like, you know they're on the way to you type look, like, that's like a fight or flight look, man. Like you don't want to be around somebody with that look. Like that's all I'm saying. Like that's one of those I'm going out or I'm taking you out with me or or I'm having a standoff because you can't even fake it now. So the apology I expected to hear, but I think Hollywood is very quiet right now. I don't want to name names, but I know that I haven't seen. It's been a lot of quiet. Where's the music? There's a lot of people haven't been making music outside of the Drake and Kendrick element, which kind of did another distraction in its own way. But there isn't any music really happening from the people that you expect, like the ones that are surrounded by Diddy or the ones that are like. There's a quiet storm, man. Like, and the distractions are working. Entertainment, other people crashing out. The Kendrick beef. I think that's going to end very bad. I think it's going to end really bad because I don't know how well, he can't get extradited or then he's in the islands right now or something.
Who's that?
Diddy.
Oh, I think he's back in the States. I think he's still here. I think
Maybe
he's not. I don't know.
I heard that when he flew on that plane immediately, I know he can't come back. Especially right now from what I saw recently, man. They said that he has a person that's been working with them for a long time. Unfortunately, I saw that on one of those YouTube videos, and then I saw some supported data backing it up. Like they have footage of the guy. So essentially,
supposedly he's back in his homes.
Really?
Yeah. April 1st, 2024. Sean Diddy Combs has returned to his Instagram nearly a week after federal investigation in his homes. Oh wait, it doesn't say where he is actually, but I think he was like in Miami like a while back ago with the producer Stevie J.
You might be right. I think I do remember something about Stevie J. Well, I'll say this much, man. I don't have a really strong stance on it. I don't like seeing like the downfall of anything because I don't get off on it. But I will say, as far as people that were victimized getting to say their piece and getting to have justice, it's demonic out here, man. So I just hope that whatever happens is the right cause. And I do know that a lot of Hollywood right now are not getting sleep. I would say, like, on all sides of the pill, all sides, mainly the hip hop community. I'm gonna say that because that paperwork, man, they're all like the names, man, like the connections, like the video footage, like they were saying they're calling people to the stands, and these are famous artists. So you got to think, if I had to take a guess, it's probably a lot of these young guys, man, like the little yacht, like these, like the guys that came in at this hour and had to go through that pipeline, and they didn't have a say so. So, like, I mean, I saw Bieber's kind of facing reactions to a little bit of it. I feel like he's going to be a big part of this, low key. I don't know what Usher's stance will be on it. What's your take on that? You think anybody's going to use this as a non-leverage moment and really, like a high profile person, take it to that level and admit it?
I feel like a lot of people just want to detach themselves from it as a PR, defense mechanism. So anybody who is connected to him, a lot of people are either trying to come out and say something so they can detach themselves from him and just talk shit about him. Like I literally saw people who I know who was promoting Diddy, and saying how they were, with his label or they were friends with him in some way. And as soon as this came out, they immediately went on and said, "Oh, this guy's a piece of shit," and this guy.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
I saw that.
Wow. Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, that's fight or flight. It's fight or flight, man. And that's what's so sad about it. They allow certain individuals to operate in a certain space, knowing that people, either whether they were down with that or not, are in like around these people, and they don't have the same power to not be in this space. So they're being absent-minded about it. And then when
like people who were hanging out with Diddy and stuff like that at the time, they leveraged him and talked about him to leverage his fame.
Yes.
And his
Go.
power. And so they never really liked him. They were just using his energy or his popularity to make them.
He knew that. He knew that too. Right. He got the jump on them. It's like he's like I don't even like myself. Why would you like me? Like that's probably how a lot of certain people think. They're like, I know why you're around me because I'm me. So I can be whoever I want to be. You around me. And that's when it gets sinister and dark. I ain't saying all the way, but I just felt like, a lot of people were just needing to be around him and use his energy. And then with that being said, they had to they had to come to terms with reality at some point and say, hey, I know what's happening at these events. So when things hit the fan, maybe it won't. Maybe they just thought it would never hit the fan, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. So,
And yeah, I think we're gonna have to almost end this one. Cameras
yeah.
out.
Oh man. All right. Hey, that was a good ending, man. We shut the lights off.
We shut the lights off.
We shut the lights off, man.
Closing time.
Closing time.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you, man. But anyways, let's wrap this up. We'll do this another time. But
yeah,
it's
brother.
great having you back on the pod. It's been a
Yeah,
while.
man.
We did a 2-hour and 40-minute session, probably minus the 39 minutes that we lost.
Getting right. Yeah, man.
We
It was
came, we
an honor.
conquered, we tried. We know.
It was an honor,
you guys
man.
remember next time not to do the Dell or whichever computer.
No,
or
hey,
do it in real life.
dude, you're not getting the Dell, man. I'll be Mac only. Return to the Mac.
All right. Yeah. Well,
Good stuff, man. I'm happy to be here, man. It was an awesome time as always, man. Love the podcast, man. Love the energy, brother. And can't wait for the next one, man. It's always a love, man. One love forever for that, man. Seriously.
awesome. Likewise, bro. So yeah, I'm gonna keep you on for a second, and then we're just gonna wait for it to upload.
All right, sounds good.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Kids in the Room podcast. Kids in the Room podcast.
That's right. That's right.
Brought to you by Move Faces TV. Let's go.